ties to an organization that opposes Rwandan President Paul Kagame. The activist and his supporters did not participate in his trial, saying it was politically motivated. Observers are wondering about the stability of European banks today. NPR's Rob Schmitz reports from Berlin German shares of that country's largest bank fell by about 7% in early trading.
Deutsche Bank shares plummeted following a spike in credit default swaps, a form of insurance for a company's bondholders against its default. The German lender's shares retreated for a third consecutive day and have lost more than a fifth of their value so far this month. This comes in the wake of Switzerland's emergency rescue of Credit Suisse by a rival bank UBS, a move that European regulators hoped would help calm the markets. But bank failures in the U.S. have triggered contagion concern among investors, which was deepened by further monetary policy tightening from both the European Central Bank last week and the U.S. Federal Reserve earlier this week. Rob Schmitz, NPR News, Berlin.
On Wall Street, the Dow was down about 180 points. This is NPR.
Good morning. With the latest from the GBH Newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro. 3 years into the coronavirus pandemic, state health officials say COVID wastewater levels are continuing to drop in Boston. New data out yesterday shows a 20% decrease in new virus cases and falling hospitalizations. The Boston Public Health Commission's wastewater surveillance program also shows that the number of COVID particles in the wastewater dropped by 42% over the past 2 weeks. Good news. Food advocates are continuing their push to maintain free school meals for students across the state. A supplemental budget filed by Governor Healy would extend the pandemic program. Paul Hahi is superintendent of the Spencer East Brookfield School District in Central Mass. At a panel on the issue yesterday, he said the free meals have been vital.
It's a much different feel and vibe in our district amongst the students and staff, and they're much more engaged. I can't say it enough. I mean, just a hungry student struggles to learn.
Healy's supplemental budget also includes money to help cover a portion of SNAP benefits when expanded federal funding for the nutrition program expires later this month. In sports, the Celtics host the Pacers at the Garden tonight. Exhibition baseball, Red Sox playing Atlanta today. 6 more days until opening day. March Madness, both men and women are in action today as well as tonight. Increasing clouds today, high low 50s, somewhat cloudy overnight, low 34. Snow, sleet, rain tomorrow, no accumulation, but it'll be chilly and wet, high in the upper 30s. It is 46 in Boston right now.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include the United States Postal Service, reinventing its network with shipping options designed to keep businesses moving forward. USPS, delivering for America. USPS.com/moving forward.
I'm Henry Santoro. This is GBH News.
Jim Browdy, I am Marjorie Egan. You're listening to Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH. We are broadcasting live as we do every Friday from the Boston Public Library, and we are also streaming on Facebook.com/GBH News and YouTube.com/. Thank you very much, Jim.
And you wanted to thank all the people here for coming.
I did
you not? Thank you all for coming is what you meant to say.
Yes, I did.
By the way, yesterday, if you're listening at the end of the show, Marjorie and I totally disgraced ourselves by laughing so hard we were unable to talk. So we're going to try to improve our professionalism, if that's the right word.
I don't know.
Today, because we surely didn't show it yesterday.
It may be challenging with our first topic.
It may be challenging. In any case, well, actually, it's a serious topic.
Serious topic.
And incidentally, for those who are expecting the Attorney General to join us at 11, which was the original plan, she's attending the funeral of a law enforcement officer. This morning, she will join us from 1 to 2 live in person at the library. If you have a question, you can call her then, 1 to 2. Andrea Campbell. So speaking of the question of what is and isn't obscene, remember Supreme Court Justice Potter Stewart famously said, "I know it when I see it." You should have added, even if I have to really squint to see it. Down in Florida this week, I assume you've heard about this, a principal at something called Tallahassee Classical School, which describes itself on its website as, quote, training the minds and improving the hearts of young people through a content-rich classical education in the liberal arts.
Classical.
The principal was given the option of leaving or getting fired after 6th graders were shown images of Michelangelo's David. I think maybe the most famous sculpture in the history of humankind, without notification of parents. In fact, one of the people in authority who helped force her out described David as pornographic.
Pornographic.
Now, even if you have a passing understanding of art history, which is about all I have, you probably know what feature the parents were upset about. It's about 3 parents, by the way, David's oversized hands notwithstanding. The number is 877-301-8978, call or text. It's obviously not the first time Florida schools have made headlines for how they restrict what is and isn't allowed to be taught. Banning books, Don't Say Gay, we're going to talk about that later with Sue O'Connell, critical race theory, 1619, and now basic art history. And so we have a few questions for you, which I think are pretty obvious. Are you concerned about this creeping throughout the country into our public schools? What about the fact that the guy behind all this, Ron DeSantis, is one of the 3 most likely people to be the president of the United States of America? The number is 877-301-8970. I have to say, I think most listeners know, this is a very dangerous topic to do with someone like Marjorie. So sort of get it out of your system, and then I'll talk about what I think are the serious concerns here.
You just have to say to yourself, they're supposed to be focusing on classical learning. And I guess you'd say there are not any more things classical
than David.
Or than the Greeks, right? I mean, so these people can't stop at David, I guess. They have to go to the Parthenon, naked on horseback, of course, in the freezes of the Parthenon.
Not happening.
That was a difficult situation for us all. They'd have to go after the popes in Sistine Chapel, because half of the Sistine Chapel, a bunch of naked people up there, and who more than the Catholics, I guess. I don't know that they're necessarily fans of pornography. And you say to yourself, what do these people want to do? Do they want David dressed differently? They want to put him in a little pair of boxer shorts, or
well, do you remember John Ashcroft?
or briefs?
Do you remember John Ashcroft as Attorney General?
Oh,
and he used to stand in front of, is it called Lady Liberty? Is that
Lady
what it is?
Victory or Victory of whatever it is.
And there's one bare breast.
That's
right.
And
because the bare breast on the statue was pretty much resting on his shoulder when he gave a press conference. Do you remember?
Yeah.
He had the whole sculpture draped rather than have the breast.
She's called the Spirit of Justice. That's her name. That's right. She's covered on one side and bare breast on the other side. One of the best things of all, though, was when Attorney General Edward Meese, is it up there? We pointed to something?
I think we'll have the image in a second. Go ahead.
Back in the 80s, when Attorney General Ed Meese was releasing this report on pornography, and he was very appalled by it.
There's John Ashcroft.
There's John Ashcroft.
Right over his right eyebrow, if
That's
you're not
John
watching.
Ashcroft. So imagine now that instead of John Ashcroft, it's Ed Meese, the Attorney General in the 80s.
I don't remember what he do.
Railing and ranting about pornography while he's moving back and forth in front of this bare breast.
Oh, I don't even remember that.
Yeah,
I didn't remember that. Yeah.
And there was a big contretemps about this, the bare breast, and Ari Fleischer, who was then the press secretary to one of the Bushes, he joked about the controversy to reporters, and he volunteered to do some difficult duty. He said, if anybody has any more new statues, bring them to my office, and I will review them.
Not only does one of the censors here, and one of the people who forced this principle out, call it pornography. I mean, think about it for a minute. Pornography.
Right.
I think it's the same guy. I think it's the chair of the board. I'm not sure. But one of the people in position of authority referred to showing David in an art history class to 6th graders as, quote, woke indoctrination, because anti-wokeism is this pathetic, moronic mantra that we're hearing from Ron DeSantis. And I know you're making light of this, and people can make light of it if they choose. Is this not? I mean, this started, by the way, for those who don't realize, this all started in Virginia in the race between the guy who then became the governor, Glenn Youngkin, and the guy you're not so crazy about, the Democratic candidate. And the Democratic candidate, I think, misspoke about the keeping parents out of the public education of their kids, and that became the cultural rallying cry for Republicans. They figured if it worked for Youngkin in Virginia, which was trending blue Democratic, it was going to work nationally. Obviously, DeSantis has picked it up and expanded it, but Michelangelo's David is pornography in Florida schools.
I didn't know. I did not know, because apparently people thought it was a fake, but apparently Michelangelo also did a naked Jesus Christ right next to the statue.
Is this a serious thing?
No, I'm serious. It was intended. Oh, there he is.
Oh, it is.
There he is, right up there, naked Jesus Christ, intended for this cathedral. Because, as you know, the popes and the Catholics are big on pornography, Jim. I didn't know that, but apparently
that's what the Pope said. The Pope recently didn't he urge the priest not to have pornography on their
On
phones?
their phones.
Now, the implication to me was that they had pornography on their phones.
Well,
right?
once again, we talked about the Supreme Court justice who famously said, "I know pornography when I see it."
Potter
Now we're
Stewart,
looking
yeah.
at that right there. Is that not Michelangelo? Is that a Michelangelo sculpture, or is that pornography?
Well, I guess to some people in Florida, it's pornography. So we want to know what your take on this is. And by the way, I assume this is just going to pick up momentum as the presidential campaign heats up. Our number is 877-301-8970. Have we shown the David photo? I can't remember. Let's put that up too. This is the photo of the sculpture in question. Remember we did the story on this. Isn't this the woman? I think it was a story in the New York Times whose full-time job is to, I think I'm right about this, is to dust David.
Yep.
Or maybe it's to dust a bunch of statues. There he
is.
That's in Florence.
He's got a sling over his shoulder. Yes, it's in Florence.
Okay.
And it is one of the most impressive things. I remember seeing it when I was
So
young. And on the way down to see the David, there's all these Michelangelo statues, and they're unfinished. There are people coming out of
I didn't remember
rocks.
that. Rocks.
Yeah, they're on the side, the big slabs of marble, I think it is, and they're coming out and pushing their way out. You know what they all are, Jim?
No.
They're
pornographic.
They're naked.
By the way, are you concerned by this, or are you just...
I think these people are just nuts. I think they've lost their marbles, and I mean, I think if with all the problems people have in the world...
This is not some lunatic individual school committee member in Alabama.
They fired
this is following the lead of the governor of the state of Florida,
they fired the
who's
principal.
the number 2 man in the Republican race for the presidency.
And once again, this is a school, this is a charter school, a public charter school that's supposedly centered on traditional Western liberal arts education. What is that? That is the Greeks, that is the Romans, that is right down through the Renaissance, right down through the Dark Ages. And what is all this full of? Naked art. I think that they'd have to put little brief shorts or little loincloths on let's go through all the museums and dress them up.
Can I tell you something? Let me just tell you what my position is on this, and and I mean this totally sincerely, and it may be totally unfair, but it's borne out by political history.
Yeah.
These guys who are calling this pornographic and forcing this woman out, what do you think they're doing in their spare time?
Looking at pornography on
their phones. I am totally...
Eric from Ashland, thank you for calling.
Eric, what's up?
You're welcome. Yeah, the classic case in point that you just made probably applies to Rudy Giuliani back in the day when he was trying to censor all the art in New York.
That's right.
Anyway,
and he got caught in a few situations, as you may recall.
Go ahead.
Yes. And I also want to apologize for calling you out at the Bruce Springsteen concert the other night when you came out of the garden.
Oh, I remember. I remember seeing you with your family. Hey, Eric, how great was that, by the way?
Yeah.
How great was that?
It was a great concert.
Oh, my God.
It was a great concert. The other thing I want to say is I'm a visual arts teacher.
Oh.
And at a high school level, and the school where I teach has actually prohibited me from showing images of nudity when I front load a project with art historical images to show kids.
Where's this?
I actually teach out of state at a school that, to your earlier reference to the school in Florida, professes to teach innovative and traditional methods, right? And the traditional seems to be weighing out on the innovative. And I'm really incensed by it. And this case in Florida is outrageous, but not surprising, I guess, given the climate that we're in.
Eric, what state? What state are you in?
New York.
Wow.
New York State?
I teach in New York. I live in Massachusetts. It's a long story. I drive down there and come back on the weekends. But yes,
wow.
I teach out of state in New York. You would think, progressive liberal New York in a private school, no less. But yeah, they have prohibited me from showing nudity.
Well, you're making our point, unfortunately.
Well, they're going to have to shut down a lot of the museums, I guess, in New York City, because when you go in to see the classical or the Renaissance or modern art or Georgia O'Keeffe, what she showed.
O'Keeffe, I do know what she showed.
She showed, they call them flowers.
That's exactly.
I'm not sure they were
Marty's
actually
using the
flowers.
air quotes.
And she was one of the great female artists, and I guess she's had it.
Hey, Eric, you know what we'd appreciate if you have a minute? And if you want it kept off the record, we'll do it. Send us an email, bpr@gbh.org, and fill in some of the blanks for us. And if you want us not to share the details, we won't. But we're interested. And it was good to say hello the other night. Thanks for the call, Eric from Ashland. That's pretty horrifying.
Here's it.
By the way, there are parts of New York State that are very conservative. I don't know where it is in New York State, so it isn't like New York is all Manhattan, but still.
Here's Mika from Washington, D.C. Ron DeSantis makes Republicans love cancel culture and makes Democrats hate it. This is a form of cancel culture, I would say.
It's woke indoctrination.
But to
of course it is.
Shut this down, it's just coming from the other side.
It's protecting parental rights.
Lisa in the car, thank you for calling.
Hi, how are you?
Fine, thank
hi.
you.
So I feel like we're living in the upside down. I don't even know what's going on in the world. But, no, seriously, but my hope, and of course I thought it was a joke when Nitwit ran and was horrified when he won the presidency. My hope is that enough people will see how insane Ron DeSantis is, that more people will get up and vote against him, because this is just frightening.
Yeah.
By the way, Lisa, in Florida, he didn't win. He won in a landslide in his recent election a couple of months ago. An absolute landslide over a former governor, not some, extremist Democrat, Charlie Crist, the former governor of Florida, crushed by Ron DeSantis. Lisa, thanks for the call. Donna, watching on YouTube, posted, I guess if children are going to see private parts, parents should be given a heads up. Pun intended. Thank you very much, Donna, for that.
Listen to this. Critical race theory is the big thing that Ron DeSantis has been crusading against. A lot of Republicans have too, even though it's not taught. It's something that you learn in law school if you go to law school. But Eric from Lynn says, I am sure DeSantis is drafting anti-critical nudity theory as we speak. Remember, when you send textbooks to Florida, hand draw some underwear on all those naked statues.
Can I tell you something? This parental rights thing, I know I'm not the first. Parental rights, whatever iteration it takes, is going to be totally central to whoever runs against whoever the Democratic nominee is. I know Biden is what most people think. I'm not convinced.
I think it's only a matter of time before the GOP comes after premarital sex, Jim.
Tim in New Hampshire, you're next on Boston Public Radio. Hey, Tim, what's up?
Good morning, folks.
Hi.
I have a really good one for you. And you're welcome to fact check it. I've done it. Fact check it.
Tim, this is a really bad. Tim, you got to start over again. And if it doesn't work well, we may have to put you on hold and try again. Say it again, Tim.
How are we now? Can you hear me now?
A little better. Yep.
Okay, I'm standing in the window.
Okay.
Here's a good one for you. On a per capita basis, the highest concentration of pornography stores and exotic dancer bars is in the Bible Belt.
I've not heard that, Tim.
You're welcome to fact check it. You can have the crew fact check it. I've fact checked it myself many times, and it is definitely a true fact that there is more pornography outlets and exotic dancer bars in the Bible Belt than anywhere else in the United States.
What you're saying is a little hypocrisy. It's sort of when I was lobbying Congress in the 80s and early 90s, the rule of thumb was the most virulently anti-gay members of Congress were what?
They were in the men's room at airports getting arrested. Is the guy from, what was he, from Iowa or Idaho or whatever he was? Yeah, I mean, I think it's almost a truism. But thank you for the call, 877-301-8970. Are we going a little bit too far here when Michelangelo's David is deemed pornography and costs a school principal in Florida her job? We're debating where we're headed in the United States. 877-301-8970 is the number at which you can call us. We are streaming live on Facebook.com/GBH News and YouTube.com/GBH News and broadcasting live at the Boston Public Library.
Next time on The World, an American woman confronts a family secret. Years after her grandfather's death, she learns that he had been a member of the Hitler Youth and a Nazi soldier.
There is a part in me that feels like I have done something so wrong and so horrible, such that I'm carrying this as if it was mine.
Unlocking the emotional inheritance of shame on The World.
This afternoon at 3, here on GBH News 89.7.
Funding for our programs comes from you and The Wilbur, presenting Boney James. Detour, the jazz saxophonist, songwriter, and producer, comes to The Wilbur on April 4th. Tickets and more information available at thewilbur.com. And Newport Mansions. Besides Vanderbilt or Edison, how much do you know about the period that transformed America? You can learn more about this progressive period with the lecture series, The Gilded Age Years, Transforming America. More at newportmansions.org.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. I'm Jim Browdy. She's Marge Regan. We're live at the Boston Public Library, streaming on Facebook.com/GBH News, YouTube.com/GBH News. The Attorney General will join us from 1 to 2 today. If you're just joining us, we're talking about the controversy down in Florida where the principal of Tallahassee Classical School was either told to quit or be fired after she showed pornography, according to her critics. To sixth grade students there, the pornography was the statue of David, arguably the most famous statue in the world. Before we get back to the calls and texts, can I just say one more thing? Because I'm working myself into a frenzy. When I mentioned before, DeSantis is one of the 3 front runners. I don't know where we'll have a chance to discuss this today or not. In terms of a lack of concern about preserving the key tenets of democracy, the woman who is perceived to be the front runner to be Trump's vice presidential nominee, Kari Lake, who lost the governor's race in Arizona, after the Supreme Court of Arizona refused to take her appeal yesterday, her quote was, did you read this? "We're going to burn it down," was what a woman who wanted to be governor of Arizona said. That comes on the heels of Trump posting a photograph of Alvin Bragg, the prosecutor in Manhattan, of his face. Do you know what the photograph is that is immediately to the left of his face?
Trump is holding a baseball bat aimed at Bragg's head.
I mean, really?
I know.
Really?
I know. And you don't hear pushback, even from the people. I was listening to something this morning, and I forget who said it, but somebody said, if one of these Republican candidates like a DeSantis, who's not going to do it, but if get up and said, there's no room for violence, there's no room for racism, there's no room for anti-Semitism, these little dog whistles, because most of the country does not, I hope that's true, that most of the country does not like that kind of thing, that they would emerge to the top. But nobody did it, and they're still standing up for Trump. And you have to say to yourself at this point, what's up with the GOP? All they seem to be interested in is, what gay people are doing, what trans people are doing, what women are doing, birth control, abortion. I mean, they're like in now pornographic statues. I mean, isn't this a little odd, this obsession with sex, when people can't get their medical care and people can't afford to buy houses and people can't afford to
Well, it's a
rent?
twofer for them. One, it helps them win elections, and 2, it gets them aroused. And I'm not kidding. I really believe. I'm serious.
That's probably true. That's probably true. Listen to this. This is from Stephen in Bristol, Rhode Island. I think it's a good point. The Venn diagram of people who are offended by Michelangelo's David and those who oppose tearing down Confederate statues is probably a near perfect circle, more conservative hypocrisy. And another texter says, I don't remember this, maybe you do, Jim, the U.S. Mint produced a gold coin in 2016 with a bare breast on Miss Liberty, the Statue of Liberty. I don't remember that either. I can't believe that got by some of these people here. But you're right, maybe it is all about...
I'm serious. Colin from Newport says, I hope your producers are clearing the search history once they're done with this segment. 877-301-8970.
I mean, most art, when you think, not most art, but a lot of art, it's just a sea of nakedness. We have a picture of the birth of Venus, the famous Botticelli photograph, naked woman, birth of Venus. I guess they'll have to get rid of that. They'll have to run through the museum and cover her up. Yeah, you think of the Gauguin paintings out in Tahiti.
What did you tell me this morning? You thought this was called Venus on the half shell?
Venus
Is that what
on
you
the
thought
half shell. Yeah. It is, in fact, the birth of Venus by another famous artist, Botticelli. And there was an article this morning, what's up with so many naked Greek statues? Well, if you go back to the Greeks, they were all over the place. It was,
the Olympics were naked.
That's right. The Olympics were, that's right, Jim.
Greased and naked.
Jennifer.
Let me tell you, a lot of members of Congress would like to be there.
Jennifer in Holliston.
Jennifer in Holliston,
thank you for calling.
Hi, Jim. Hi, Marjorie.
Hey, Jennifer. Welcome.
I want to think this is funny, but I'm so disturbed.
I'm totally where you are.
Education. I feel like we can draw a straight line between people that feel this way and people that don't believe in science, people that don't believe in education. I just find it so worrying.
Well, I think you should find it so worrying, Jennifer. I think it is really troubling. This is not some outlier, in some rural school district in some red state. This is essentially following the orders of the very popular governor of the state of Florida. Jennifer, thanks for the call.
It's supposedly the small government less regulation party, and what they're doing is regulating everybody's private lives, sexual lives, reproductive lives. I mean, they're regulating.
Of course.
It's just crazy. 877-301-8970.
Before we get, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I know we've said this 1,000 times about how we are all the most passive people. Those who are upset by these things in this country. We always cite, did you see what happened in France? Well, the protests are going on. They're getting more intense. Do you see who is not visiting France on Monday?
Who?
As a result of the protests? Your favorite, King Charles. Canceled his state visit to see Macron.
Well, it's a mess over there.
Because it's a mess. Because they are upset about something, raising the retirement age in a totally extra legislative way. He bypassed the legislature, Macron, because he couldn't get the votes. And the people, believe me, I'm not endorsing violence. I am endorsing protest if you're unhappy. And what do? We talk about it. We tweet about it. We whatever about
Although
it.
I can't get around the tragic situation of when the pension system is going broke over there and they're raising the retirement age from 62 to 64 because people live into their 80s and 90s now and they can't afford it.
Marjorie, if Donald Trump or Joe Biden had a policy, even if you liked it, and he thought he couldn't get it through Congress, so he says, I'm just going to implement this unilaterally without any legislative approval, even if you liked the policy, would you say that's great because we achieved the good end?
I think to Macron it doesn't matter because he's not running for re-election.
That's not much of a defense,
is the people. Listen to this. This is from the Salt Lake Tribune yesterday.
What's that?
It says a Utah parent says the Bible contains pornography and should be removed from school libraries. That's from Kara in Framingham.
Thank you, Kara.
And, I was thinking, we were talking about the Sistine Chapel before. One of the most famous parts of the Sistine Chapel is God touching the finger of a naked Adam.
Oh, is it a naked Adam?
Adam and Eve were naked, Jim, at the beginning of the Bible.
But are things showing, or are they just...
Yes, and until Eve convinced Adam to eat from the apple, they were naked the whole time, running around the Garden of Eden.
Wow.
That was the first man and woman created.
I heard about
some people believe by God. Anne from Sudbury, what do you think?
Anne.
Hi, thanks for taking my call.
Thank you.
I'm curious, as a longtime high school English teacher, I'm assuming that a lot of the people who are in Congress today at some point were forced to read Nathaniel Hawthorne's The Scarlet Letter.
That's right.
I don't know that these guys read it.
Oh, yes.
They have been involved with, they may have gone to Spark Notes or Cliff Notes, as we used to call them. But the general idea was that it was a lovely story taking place right up here, and it featured a lot of Puritans, and it featured a woman who was supposedly a widow who got pregnant. And later it was determined that the father of her precious baby was her minister.
That's right.
Keep that filthy pornographic book in school in Florida?
By the way, in a moment of seriousness, we're going to discuss book banning with Sue O'Connell. I'm guessing that in some jurisdictions that's on a book banning list. Do you not think so, Anne?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And there are probably quite a few other things, also written by wonderful American writers in the 19th century, some of whom have turned out to be less than sterling personalities, according to these guys in Florida. So it would be very interesting to see what they're banning these days.
Anne, thanks for the call. Thanks for being a teacher, too. Thank you for the call. Appreciate it.
Here's from Ellen in the Newsfeed Cafe. If only these people would worry more or as much about guns in schools.
Well, it's so, of course.
Yeah.
Of course. And the goal, of course, beyond what I said to you before, in response, is not only do they think it's a winning strategy, and maybe it provokes arousal. And by the way, I didn't mean that as a joke. I mean it totally seriously. It diverts attention away from the things they don't want to do that people want. Whether it's the right to choose, reasonable gun reform, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, it's the famous wedge issue strategy, and they're using it, I would say, quite effectively. Are we moving on?
No, let's take one more call.
Okay, let's go to
877-301-8970. I want to be worked into a frenzy at the beginning of the show.
I'm not sure where we're going. Are we going to...
Well, they don't want us to take any of these. Okay, we're done.
Okay.
They're the decision makers.
Okay,
we're just here to facilitate things.
We're moving on. We're going to talk about artificial...
By the way, does this not drive you out of your mind? I mean, it's unbelievable. 6 months ago, we had Dobbs. Then we have this. Then we have the report out of the Texas Tribune the other day saying that cops were too scared, 400 cops, too scared to enter a classroom to save kids in Uvalde. Why? Because of the AR-15 that the shooter had, yet legislators in Texas say it's not the weapon, even though law enforcement people are saying it is the weapon.
Well, all I can say is if Donald Trump is president again, we can all look forward to him trying to ban birth control, trying to ban whatever. I mean, going into the statues all around him in the New York City
bats for everybody.
Museums and covering them all up. Anyway, we are moving on. We're going to talk with Andy Ihnatko, our tech man and blogger, about artificial intelligence and a bunch of other tech issues. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH, streaming on Facebook.com/GBH News, on YouTube.com/GBH News, and live at the Boston Public Library.
Evictions are up in Boston, and a key protection for tenants statewide is about to expire. I'm Adam Riley. This week on Talking Politics, we'll look at what the government could do to help people stay in their homes and why it might not happen. Plus, my conversation with Senator Ed Markey on the future of TikTok, his hometown of Malden, and Biden's approval of oil drilling in Alaska. All that on Talking Politics tonight at 7 on GBH2 and online at gbhnews.org.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you. And the Boston Speakers Series, announcing its upcoming season at Symphony Hall for 7 evenings, featuring Jane Fonda, Van Jones, Dr. Laurie Santos of the Happiness Lab, and explorer Celine Cousteau. bostonspeakers.org. And Cambridge Savings Bank, where they are committed to your financial well-being and community is at the core of everything they do. Cambridge Savings Bank, always you. More at cambridgesavings.com, member FDIC.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Braude, and Marjorie. It's not a choice. Jim Braude and Marjorie, and we're live at the Boston Public Library, streaming at facebook.com/GBH News, youtube.com/GBH News as well. Attorney General will join us in 90 minutes for the last hour of the show, 1 to 2. Andrea Campbell will be here to take your calls and questions. By the way, people at the library will be able to go over to that mic right there and ask a question directly should they choose. We're joined now by Andy Ihnatko. Andy's a tech writer and blogger. You can follow him on Twitter at IHNATKO. Hello, Andy Ihnatko.
Hey there, Heather. Hello there.
How are you?
Hey, Andy, great to see you. So it seems like in the last few weeks, all we seem to be talking about is artificial intelligence here, artificial intelligence there. You addressed 2 different companies that are kind of racing to compete against each other for their artificial intelligence hold on the market. What's going on?
Yeah, we're definitely at what we call an inflection point.
Yes.
Some people get hurt in inflection points, but it's an interesting time. Yeah, both Google and a company called OpenAI are kind of in a space race, kind of like the Russians and NASA trying to get to the moon in the 60s. And they're both trying to get the most attention and the most knockers with their large language models and chatbots. These are artificial intelligence models that really understand human language, which means that it can talk to you, it can understand what you say to it or type to it. It can respond in English languages, in plain English very, very well. And most interestingly, for the purpose of a demo, when you expose it to billions and billions and billions of pages of written text on the internet, it can basically doesn't understand it, but it can assimilate it well enough that if you ask a question about something it's seen, it might be able to respond, at least pretending as if it knows what it knows about it.
And who's winning the competition right now?
It's really, really early. A lot of people are going to see all these wonderful, wonderful demos because they're hugely impressive. Where you just ask it I need to write an apology letter to a coworker because I ate their kung pao shrimp even though I knew it was theirs, and it will give you 3 paragraphs of apology letter. You can say, actually, I want it to be a little bit more fawning because it turns out that they're going to be my boss later on. And it was, okay, we can make it shorter? Yes, here you go. And you're having what feels like a very natural conversation, and it's helping you to write this letter, even though it's generating all the text itself. It's a great demo, but it's still really, really experimental. Both Google and OpenAI, the 2 leaders, they both released. Google released their first public use of the chatbot that they're working on. OpenAI has one that you might have heard of called ChatGPT. They've got version 4 that they just released a week or 2 ago. Both CEOs of the companies, you're used to this starting out. You're used to Steve Jobs saying, "We have redefined the phone. You are going to love this." Both of these CEOs, I think I actually have the quote here. The CEO of OpenAI, in introducing GPT-4, said, It's still flawed, it's still limited, and it still seems more impressive on first use than it does after you spend more time with it. And that was similar to what Sundar Pichai at Google said introducing Bard. It's experimental. Don't ask it for facts and believe it. And that's the trap people are falling into.
So why did they introduce it at this juncture instead of waiting a little longer? It's just about making the money or beating each other, or?
I gotta go back to the space race. Sputnik lit a fire and basically said, okay, you didn't know that you were in a race, but you are in now. Google has been working on these large language models for years and years and years. 2 or 3 years ago, they showed off the first version of what they demonstrated today, but they felt as though this is, again, it's experimental. It can do a lot of damage if it's done the wrong way. So they've been very, very cautious about how they do it. OpenAI, they have about $11 billion worth of investment from Microsoft, and they're like, woohoo, when they introduced their chatbot in November, and people say, wow, I asked it to write me a Seinfeld script as though George is running out of Adderall and he has to run a ball game. Oh, well, look, it actually generated a script and everything. Again, a great demo, but then when it comes down to, hey, I need to research how to manage my diabetes, the Google chatbot will say, hey, dude, I don't answer any medical questions.
Oh, really?
Hey, I have a couple of questions for you about this. I don't know if we've seen you since is it Stephen Rouse, the guy who had the conversation with chatbot GPT in the New York Times? This is the guy who had a 2-hour conversation, and the chatbot said, I love you, do you love me? You're not happy with your wife, you should leave your wife. Kevin Roos, thank you, whoever said that. Was that Zoe, whoever said that to me? Thank you, Zoe, I appreciate it. How'd that happen? I mean, in English, and you are really good in English on things that Marjorie and I cannot explain or understand. How did that exchange happen? What went wrong?
Really easy. Well, it went perfectly right. The chatbot did exactly what it was programmed to do. The thing is, it's so good at mimicking a human being that it activates our own brain software about interacting with the human being that we say, wow, I didn't realize it felt that way about me. What is its motivations? We forget that at its nature, they're based on an AI concept called large language models. And all of these, as great as they demo, they're just a super, super high-powered version of autocomplete. Like, when you type something in your phone,
it finishes the thing, or corrects.
So because both these chatbots have seen 9 billion pages of information, it knows, like, if someone asks a question, how would a human being answer this question? And you don't know if it's coming from. It's seen like 1,000 different pieces of Babylon 5 fan fiction where everybody's falling in love and breaking up, and that's what it's sort of feeding with its responses on right now. Versus, is it getting it from clinical research papers about psychology and it's giving you advice based on knowledge that it thinks it's assimilated? It doesn't know. It's just trying to figure out if a human being were to say this, what would another human being say in response? And if this is the first sentence of the response, what would the second and third and fourth sentence be?
I have a couple. Can I ask a few more follow-up kinds of things? The first day this was available, ChatGPT, to write something, I mentioned this on the air. First of all, I typed in this really complex set of facts, and it spit out something that was pretty competent, I should say. And then I got sort of taken by it. And I typed in a really complex story, and I said, and I used myself, and I said, and Jim Browdy, who's a very successful radio talk show host, et cetera, on my honor, this is the response I got. When I hit send, it came back and said, I do not know who Jim Browdy is. So that was really a comeuppance kind of thing. But did you read this piece in the New York Times today? It's a column. I don't know who wrote it, and my apologies. The title of which is, if we don't master AI, it will master us. Let me read you a key paragraph. In 2022, over 700 top academics and researchers behind the leading artificial intelligence companies were asked in a survey about future AI risk. Half of those surveys stated there was a 10% or greater chance of human extinction or similarly permanent and severe disempowerment from future AI systems. And it goes on to say, if a drug company was seeking approval of a drug and the expert said there was a 10% chance it was going to kill people, it wouldn't happen. Gives other examples. My fear, my uninformed but emotional fear, is like so much that's happening in society right now. Our ability to regulate and control AI we're here, the tortoise, and they are the hare on steroids. Is that an unfair description?
I don't think it's that wrong. The thing is, though...
So why should I not worry about this
human
extinction?
extinction?
Because when, getting back to the space race, there were people who thought that the first crew to try to land on the moon is going to die because they're just going to sink into this soft powder. That was not true.
Doesn't mean this is not true.
Well, you can have a scientific explanation for. I have an opinion that this is a possibility. I don't think that any kind of number like that is justified. Here's the difference: that what we're seeing right now is, again, just super autocomplete. And there are a lot of different ways where it's incredibly useful, even in its present form. But what people are kind of afraid of is what's called not artificial intelligence, but artificial general intelligence. Artificial intelligence can only do what it's been programmed to do. It won't be able to find nuclear missiles and launch them because it hasn't been programmed to figure that out yet. Artificial general... Yet. Meaning that no evil warlord has figured out that this would be a good thing for it to do. But artificial general intelligence is where the science fiction and a lot of the doom and gloom comes in, because what if you accidentally create an AI that can actually figure out what a problem is, figure out what the parameters of that problem is, and solve that problem that it was never originally designed to solve all on its own. This is basically creativity. And that's more of a philosophical argument than a computer science argument. I really don't think that this is going to... I don't think that bad stuff is going to come to pass, because, again, it's just so many... We're gonna kill ourselves with our 10 different ways before AI does it. Right now,
that's a hopeful thing.
Yeah. I'm just saying that this is what the problem about communicating about artificial intelligence with these chatbots is that, again, we have software inside our heads that has been Darwinianly programmed to figure out. When I relate to someone who I think has intelligence, someone I recognize as a human being, I start to think of what are their motives, why are they saying that, what is their background, what do they intend to do, are they going to hurt me? When a chatbot, it's not appropriate. We tend to think about, well, what if this AI gets out of control and takes over humanity? It can't. It's a piece of software that's trying to, if you give it shave and a haircut, it's programmed to tell you 2 bits. It's that, only on a huge scale.
We're talking to Andy Ihnatko.
Just a couple of things about the possibilities here. We all saw that movie Her, where Joaquin Phoenix falls in love with his operating system, Scarlett Johansson's great voice and all that, and thought it was ridiculous. And I guess that kind of is ridiculous. You take your computer away for a romantic weekend in a log cabin in Vermont or something. But on the other hand,
what are you talking about? We had callers 10 days ago who said they'd like to have a romantic relationship with an AI.
Well, that's what I'm getting to. It may not be necessarily a romantic relationship, but a lot of people who are living alone, or they're in nursing homes, or they're in extremis, and they can't really have pets because they have to take care of the pets, or they're not allowed or something. I can see where this could be a good way to cope with that loneliness, to have something that's talking to you and listening to you. I know it seems sad on the one hand, but so is being all alone and really lonely sad.
Yeah, that's why this area is so fascinating to speculate about. And we're not even talking about the doom and gloom stuff. We're talking about interesting stuff like, what if there's so many weird things, if you look at it objectively, our mourning processes. Like when someone dies, we have the body out and for everybody to see. And we're going to sit there and just watch it for, where did that come from? Now, imagine, on that basis, imagine if it wouldn't be that weird if 50, 100 years from now, you are just so despondent that you've lost your father or your mother that you said, you know what, ChatGPT, create a chatbot that speaks like my mother and uses her vernacular. Here are all my voicemails, here are the emails she sent me, and it can synthesize her voice, and so your smart speaker, you know that it's not her, but it's comforting to hear when the smart speaker says, "Oh, it's going to be cold today. Wear a jacket." She basically says it the way your mom would. And maybe it would be unhealthy if you are basically applying the love for your mother to this inanimate object. But
if it's helping you cope, that's a different story.
When my mom died, I was taking care of her for the last year of her life. It made me feel good to wear one of her bracelets for like a year after she passed, because. And there came a day where I was about to put it on again, and it's not like I didn't want to, but I'm like, you know what, this has served its purpose, thank you, bracelet, I don't need it again. Imagine AI doing something like that. Well, that's very, very possible.
You think right now, how many people who've lost family members, spouses, parents, whatever, they still have their voice on the answering machine, and they leave it there, so every time if you do call their house, which almost no one has house phones anymore, but I do know several people who have a long dead voice on their answering machine.
And it's more important than that. One of my best friends lost his voice because he had throat cancer and it went really badly, and he lost his jaw, and he lost his entire voice. And he was a journalist who made his living partly speaking.
It's one of the most famous movie critics in the history of the world.
Okay, well,
right?
Roger Ebert,
right,
God bless him.
Yeah.
He would have passed 10 years ago just in a few weeks. So I've been thinking about him a lot. But I wrote him basically a text-to-speech program for his MacBook for his speaking things. And he was working with these scientists who could, because he was Roger Ebert and he had thousands of hours of recordings of his voice, with a lot of effort, this Scottish company could create a simulation of his voice so that his text-to-speech could use his own voice. Now, that would have been something that, again, if you're Roger Ebert, you can find the right people, and you've got the means, and you've got a year to wait. But now we actually have software that if you have like 3 or 4 minutes, maybe 10 or 20 minutes, you can build a pretty good model of your own voice, so that if you did lose your voice, at least you can't speak directly to your loved ones again, but at least you could speak to them in your own voice. And generative AI is one of those great things that can improve humanity.
Generative AI, I assume, means that taking existing content and adding new elements or meaning to it.
The AI examines a big table of data and then makes something new based on what it's learned about that data. So if it sees enough of your recordings of your voice, it knows the characteristics of your voice, and it can reproduce that voice.
One more concern, and we're never going to get to the rest of our agenda today.
I have one more concern too.
Is let me preclude your answer before you give the answer.
Please.
When technology came to manufacturing, the notion was every factory job was going to disappear. Now, a lot of them did disappear, but not all of them disappeared. When I was reading some of your examples of generative AI, for example, taking a sea of text messages or messages between people, hundreds of them, and essentially pulling out the core message, pulling out what the to-do list was, et cetera, et cetera. There is, it seems to me, at a much faster pace, there is the possibility of work elimination in, you're nodding that this is real.
You're absolutely right. I mean, think about, we're in the middle of Copley Square. We're surrounded by really old insurance companies. All of them have, in these huge buildings, had an entire floor of people who just typed letters. And then computers allowed that. Typing was not a specialized skill anymore. All those people got fired. Entering data into computers, key punch operators. That was another floor of the building that was no longer needed anymore because it was automated out of existence. I think that this is a very, and I have nothing but sympathy for people like including myself, who will lose some work based on this because I don't think it can write, these bots can write like I do, but they can write like I do if I don't care. And maybe one out of every 30 days, I'm just like, oh God, just get me to breakfast. But what I'm getting at, though, is that you can't turn off the rocks have already started falling down the side of the hill. You can't stop them now, so you can just try to figure things out. And I think that before we go, one really important thing is that I hope that the idea that a really important executive whose job it is to look at all these emails and through schedules, and if this job has been replaced with management and project management by AI, this is when someone gets confronted by the fact that we have been fooling ourselves and being really insulting to half the workforce by saying there's a division between what is called skilled labor and unskilled labor. Well, this person is just digging ditches. He's just stocking shelves. He's unskilled labor. I'm a manager. I'm a project director. I'm a coordinator. I'm skilled labor. So therefore, too bad you didn't stay in school. You could be skilled labor like me. When all along, it's just been labor. We should be all on the same team pulling together instead of saying, oh, I'm so great because I do something that can't be automated. Well, guess what? A lot of the people who are working hard to automate anything, there's always going to be investment in any technology that allows a corporation to fire people. That's why a lot of dumb ideas like self-driving cars get endless funding with no profits in sight because, oh boy, if that's a way that we can fire every truck driver and every taxi driver, that's worth us putting another $2 billion.
We're talking
so we have several questions from texters. Joe from Plymouth wants to know if AI is just the next step after talk radio. And another texter wants to know if Andy's saying the producers can upload Jim and Marjorie into the AI and we can air the show right through 2054.
Actually, we don't have to do that because I intend to be here until 2054, so it's fine.
But that gets to a question that I have, is that one of the things that chatbots seem unable to do, at least right now, is they can't assume a voice of someone. Like if you read novels, you read a Hemingway novel, you can tell it's Hemingway because of the way he writes. You read one of my favorite writers, Alice McDermott.
Yes, they can.
Can they?
They can, just
can
not
they?
with the level of precision and skill.
They can't assume the voice. I don't think they can assume the voice, but maybe I'm wrong.
I agree with you. Right now, again, the status of the best chatbots we have right now, and generating text based on prompts is one of the big key features that it does. It gets the surface details right. Just like there's a difference between someone doing an Elvis impression, like, okay, you've hit the surface points that people recognize as Elvis, but then let's play an actual Elvis recording. Oh my God, you are nowhere close.
Yeah.
However, what I'm hoping happens is that people stop thinking of, these chatbots stop being used as examples of, hey, look, a kid gave a one-sentence prompt and got an essay and then just simply filed it in. Wouldn't it be great if it were something like, I'm a writer. I have to do 1,600 words on this news topic or whatever, and I'm saying that I've given it, let's say, 2,400 words, the bane of my existence. And my deadline is in a half hour, and I have to cut 800 words. I don't know how to do it. I could ask a chatbot, preserve my style and tone, but find a way to get this down to 1,600 words. And it wouldn't be great, but then I would take that text and then edit it to make it good. So there may be, in the next generation,
a way to do that.
Kids who grow up with this technology, just like kids who grew up with cameras in their pockets, grew up differently than the rest of us. Kids who grew up with this technology would think about, all I have to do is describe what I want, and then it will give me a result, and I'll just be the editor who says, no, I want that character to not be in love with that character. I want him, there's a reason why he doesn't want to be in love with anybody, but we don't know yet. Rewrite this scene so that he's a little bit aloof, but not really insulting. Imagine an art program just like that, where I don't know.
We discussed that with Jared Bowen quite a bit, by the way.
Yeah.
And there are categories in some art shows and art competition for AI-generated art, as I'm sure you know.
Now, Andy Nako, this is another important question. We were talking last week with people that said they want to have romances with their chatbots, and some of them were talking about really intense sexual relationships. And I thought, I'm not sure how they were going to do that, but in any case, they were going to do that. And my question is, if they had all this intense back and forth language between themselves and the chatbot, isn't there a risk of this somehow getting discovered and you would be humiliated before friends and family and half the nation?
It's still human software. We've had ways of being humiliated by, oh my God, this was the person that I thought I was in love with me was actually part of this scam farm in Iran, and I can't believe that I gave this person $23,000 to come over here and get their green card. It happens a lot. But your earlier example is pretty good too, where again there's someone who's alone, and it's okay if they know that this is a chatbot, this is a robot, but still to exercise the voice, to exercise again. I know I look like a huge geek, both just in general, but also when I think of the brain as just a computer that runs software, we have social software, and we need to keep exercising it. And like a muscle, it atrophies if you don't exercise it. So someone who is a shut-in and they only see their kids like 2 or 3 times a week, the ability to simply keep talking every single day keeps those neurons firing. And if someone is not neurotypical, who is they just closed up, they don't want to talk to people because it's a thing that they're scared of. Imagine if they could just kind of, not necessarily practice with a chatbot, but because they've been talking for the past 3 years, controlling their computer and generating art and making table orders and stuff like that, the chatbot says, hey, don't use that language, that's kind of rude, don't order me, ask me. And then in 3 or 4 years, these are the things that are possible, so long as we make sure that we're keeping our software turned to the demo setting inside our heads, that this is a bot, but nonetheless, it's helping me exercise this muscle. This barbell is not a 50-pound bag of peat moss. We're not doing real work with it, but it's helping us to build and exercise and develop those muscles that we will be able to use in the real world.
Let me just say, I'm not casting aspersions on anybody, but before you go, when the guys from This Old House used to be on regularly, Marjorie would always say, there's a question from a caller.
That's right.
And it turns out the question wasn't from a caller. It was Marjorie's question. So draw your own conclusion. When Marjorie says, some people are calling and asking about having sex with a chatbot.
Okay,
they want to know if anybody's going to find out about
the real
this.
story. This morning when we were preparing to begin the show, Jim said, I want to ask that question, but I'm too embarrassed. Would you ask it for me, please? And I said, any way to help you out, Jim Browdy, I will do it.
Can I just say one thing on your way out the door? I have great respect for your knowledge and your opinion on these things. We only have 20 seconds, so you can't even respond. When you say, essentially, don't worry, ChatGPT, you introduced it to us in November. It is already where it is in March. The notion that this is not going to totally leave us in a dangerous position in the weeds is not credible to me. Having said that, next time you're here, we'll continue the discussion. Andy, you're great. Thanks so much. Andy Ihnatko.
Andy, thank you very much. As always, Andy Ihnatko is a tech writer and blogger. You can follow him on Twitter at Ihnatko, IHNATKO. I'm sure your mom is very happy that you wore that bracelet for all that time. Coming up, there's no wrong way to eat an Oreo, but a team of scientists at MIT are twisting apart thousands of cookies, trying to find the way that keeps the cream evenly divided on both sides of the cookie. I guess it's very important research. More on that and other stories in just a moment from GBH's Callie Crossley. You're listening to Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library, and we are streaming on Facebook.com/GBH News and YouTube.com/GBH News.
It's not over yet. More smart conversation about community issues is up ahead with Jim Browdy and Marjorie Egan on Boston Public Radio. Right after a news update from NPR. Stay with us here on GBH 89.7.
Support for our programs comes from you and Mass General Brigham Health Plan, a health plan connected to a world-leading healthcare system, committed to providing innovative plans, coverage, and a broad network of doctors. Learn more at massgeneralbrighamhealthplan.org. Remember, nobody can say your guess is wrong when you're answering at home. Test your knowledge of just about everything with the exciting 14th season of High School Quiz Show, tomorrow evening at 6 on GBH2.
I'm reporter Esteban Bustillos, and you and I are listening to 89.7 WGBH, HD1 Boston, online at gbhnews.org. GBH News with NPR, what matters to you.
I'm Jim Browdy, head of Boston Public Radio, live from the Boston Public Library. Callie Crossley joins us to weigh in on a racial slur, or was it misogyny, on Boston Sports Radio, and on leaders developing Nubian Square, the economic heart of Black Boston. Then California lawmakers are pushing to make Meta, Facebook's parent company, pay newspapers for borrowed content on their site. And she'll talk about a proposal to extend the so-called Don't Say Gay legislation in Florida to 12th graders. Media maven Sue O'Connell joins us for that story and more.
I'm Marjorie Egan. Then Attorney General Andrea Campbell joins us for the final hour of the show for Ask the AG at the Boston Public Library. She'll talk about her office's shot across the bow to towns not adhering to a state law requiring affordable housing around transit stations, and how she's addressing hate and harassment in high school sports. 877-301-8970 is the number to call or text for Ask the AG, the Boston Public Library, all that and more ahead. Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Janine Herbst. The House has passed a bill that aims to increase so-called parental rights in public schools across the country. NPR's Windsor Johnston reports the Republican-backed legislation is likely to fuel the ongoing debate over what's being taught in classrooms.
The bill includes provisions that would require public schools to make certain information available online, including class curriculums and a list of library books. House Majority Leader Steve Scalise says the legislation gives parents a seat at the table.
If you've got to be concerned about what's happening in your kid's classroom, and the school doesn't want you to see what's happening in your kid's classroom, you really ought to be alarmed. But every parent ought to have that right.
Congressional Democrats argue that many of the proposed rights contained in the bill already exist under local and state law. The legislation is facing a roadblock in the Democratic-led Senate, where it would need 60 votes to pass. Windsor Johnston, NPR News, Washington.
President Biden and the First Lady are in Canada for a 2-day visit. Dan Karpenchuk reports Biden will have a packed agenda before he leaves late today.
High on the agenda will be talks about trade and how Canada will meet the challenge of countering American protectionism. The other big issue is the handling of asylum seekers, a thorny issue for both Washington and Ottawa. The two leaders are expected to discuss and announce changes to the Safe Third Country Agreement. Under a loophole in the current agreement, asylum seekers who had made their way into Canada at irregular crossings have been allowed to stay instead of letting the process play out while staying in the U.S. Biden will also likely urge Canada to take a lead role on Haiti, which has been reeling under gang violence. For NPR News, I'm Dan Karpenchuk in Toronto.
The U.S. military has conducted airstrikes in Syria. The Pentagon says they are retaliatory. This comes after a U.S. contractor was killed and 5 American service members and another U.S. contractor were wounded yesterday in Syria. NPR's Peter Kenyon reports the Defense Department is blaming an Iranian drone strike.
Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin said the U.S. Central Command responded to the drone attack on a coalition base in Syria with airstrikes that targeted facilities believed to have ties to Iran's Revolutionary Guard Corps. Videos posted to social media appeared to show explosions in Deir ez-Zor, a Syrian province near the Iraqi border. The targets reportedly included facilities Washington said had been used by Iran-backed militia groups affiliated with the Revolutionary Guards. Secretary Austin said the strikes were in response to the drone attack and a series of recent attacks against coalition forces in Syria by groups affiliated with the IRGC. Peter Kenyon, NPR News, Istanbul.
Wall Street is up off earlier lows. The Dow right now is up a fraction. The S&P 500 is down a fraction. The Nasdaq is down 21 points. This is NPR News.
Good afternoon from the GBH Radio Newsroom in Boston. I'm Henry Santoro. It's official. UMass Medical School in Worcester is expanding into Greater Boston. From our higher ed desk, GBH's Kirk Carapezza reports the school has received approval to establish a medical campus 12 miles outside of the city in Burlington.
UMass Medical signed a deal with Leahy Hospital and Medical back in December. Now, that deal is final after the two institutions announced this week they've gotten the green light from the accrediting body of medical schools in the United States and Canada. The partnership comes as the country faces a shortage of physicians. The Association of Medical Colleges estimates in just the next 10 years, the U.S. could face a 100,000 doctor shortfall. The first class of 25 students at UMass Leahy will start their training in the summer of 2024. In Boston, Kirk Carapezza, GBH News, 89.7.
A Buzzards Bay woman who's been living with dementia for the last 15 years was featured on ABC's World News Tonight last night for her piano playing. A video of 95-year-old Elaine Labar performing was featured on the program. Elaine can be heard here playing alongside her daughter, Randy. This is awesome.
We're moving on to a third movement of the Moonlight Sonata. Okay, go ahead. I don't know it. That's fine.
She doesn't know it. The clip of Elaine first went viral a few years ago. She still lives in Buzzards Bay. Awesome.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Fidelity Investments. A dedicated advisor can help create a wealth plan for a full financial picture. More at fidelity.com/wealth. Investment minimums apply. Fidelity Brokerage Services, LLC.
I'm Henry Santoro. This is GBH News.
I am Marjorie Egan. Welcome to hour number 2 of Boston Public Radio. We are broadcasting live at the Boston Public Library, and we're very grateful to people that came down here to the Boston Public Library. It'd be very embarrassing if no one ever showed up and it was just...
That'd be a little sad.
It would be a very sad state of affairs.
Oh,
so we're very grateful that people come down here. We are streaming on Facebook.com/GBH News and YouTube.com/GBH News. Hello again. Jim Brady.
Hello again, Marjorie Egan. And Andrea Campbell, the Attorney General, will be joining us in a little less than an hour. 1 to 2, she's with us to answer your questions and ours. And by the way, again, if you're at the library, our colleague Nicole is right over there. Raise your hand, Nicole. If you have a question for the Attorney General and you want to ask it from here, all you have to do is get past Nicole. In any case, joining us now at the Boston Public Library, well, I mean, that is what it is.
That's right. She's built like a linebacker over there. It's not going to be easy to get by her.
She'll be vetting the questions. Let's put it that way. It's GBH's Callie Crossley. Callie's the host of Under the Radar with Callie Crossley. You can catch that Sunday nights here at 89.7 at 6. Also the host of Basic Black. That airs Friday at 7:30. You can also hear Callie commentaries on Mondays, as in the morning, for GBH's Morning Edition. Hello, Callie Crossley.
Hello, Marjorie. Hello, Jim.
Hello.
So, Callie Crossley, because I usually have such an action-packed Sunday night, I usually listen to you on Thursday nights. I'm very glad you're on Thursday nights at 9 o'clock for the rerun of your show that's on Sundays, because you had a great interview with Michelle Miller last night. People may know her. She's on CBS Saturday morning. She's a big star on television. But she had this story that I think most of us who knew her as a journalist and broadcaster never knew about. So tell us.
Oh, I know. First of all, her new memoir is called Belonging, and she just announced yesterday it made it to the New York Times bestseller list
Good
after
for her.
a week. So great. She was raised by her father, not unusual, but didn't know for a long time, because her father kept avoiding talking about it, that her mother had given birth to her and just walked away from the hospital. That was it. That's the last time she saw her. She didn't know why. And it turns out there were a couple of complicating factors. First of all, her father was married, and so it was an illicit affair. But the second thing was that the woman, it turns out, was Latina, and her family would not have approved. So she was a big secret for all of her life. And she
Because the guy was married, or because it was a black guy?
No, black.
Okay.
Yeah. So she tried to, unpack that.
Black physician, by the way, a very successful man.
Actually, there's interesting history with him, because he was on the scene when Bobby Kennedy was assassinated, and literally held him in his arms as he died, because he was on the scene. Anyway, it's just a compelling story of the reason that the title of the book is Belonging, and the rest of it is searching for identity through loss and love, trying to figure out, where do I fit? What's going on here? Why did this happen? Why can't I get this woman, for all she knows, is still alive, but she hasn't been in touch with her for many, many, many years. It's real, and it's extremely well written, because she's a great writer and journalist, and also had the assistance of Rosemary Rothbottom, who helped her in shaping the book. So it's great. I can't say enough about how compelling a story it is, and she has so many other twists and turns in it.
And the other thing is that she became, Dad was there, and I guess the grandmother was there, but still, your mother leaving you and not knowing why is a lot to overcome, and she obviously
and everybody else has a mother and a father, you know, and so she's like, well, what's going on there?
Well, it was a great interview.
Yeah.
So speaking of compelling stories, there's a pretty compelling story in the Boston Globe today about Nubian Square and its potential development. Can you share that with us?
Well, it starts off with Richard Taylor, who people may know is a developer around town. He also is an investor in the Omni Hotel. If you go way back to when there was planning around the Omni Hotel, this is a huge opportunity for black investors based on a plan that came out of Massport, thank you. And Dwayne Jackson, who was chair of the board at the time, who worked to get this plan in, worked beautifully, got everybody in, working, win-win for everybody. The Omni, if you haven't been there, is fabulous. It really is fabulous. So that's who he is, and along with several other folks, are working to develop various parcels of land in the area, including there's a piece, I don't know if this is his piece, but there's a piece in the general area where the new Embrace Boston Center is going to be. During the time of the Embrace Boston celebration, you may have heard Imani Jeffries talking about, this is bigger than this moment. We actually have this center. There's going to be artists there. There'll be whatever. I'll note that on the piece that Richard is developing, there's a space for artists to condos, which I love, because anytime, in my opinion, you give space for artists, that's just 1,000% better to begin with. So mixed use, housing, food, retail, just an infusion of more different kinds of retail spaces. And then Benjamin, the college, I'm sorry, I'm blanking on it.
Benjamin Franklin Cummings Institute of Technology.
It will open there next year. So anyways, there's a lot of bustling going on. I was completing an interview for Basic Black's show this week, and one of the entrepreneurs about entrepreneurship is Rashonda White, and she's moving her business, Cupcake Therapy,
I've heard about that, actually, yeah.
Let me tell you something about
therapy.
those cupcakes.
Yeah,
Those cupcakes.
they're therapeutic.
Woo, are they? All vegan, gluten-free, whatever. Of course, you can't tell the difference, so that you just keep.
And they've got these 15 condo units for artists too, which I thought was really neat. Because which we talk a lot about, that artists are priced out.
Right. Yeah. So I think that anytime you have artists on the scene, that you just get a whole other vision. So a lot of excitement about it. Some people are like, yeah, okay, we tried this before, it didn't happen, or there was, the reason that there was so much depression, meaning in terms of housing or lack of housing and retail spaces down there, is because of urban renewal to begin with, where, there were no opportunities for folks of color to buy in. So there's, as the article makes clear, there is the balance of making sure that you don't push out everybody who's been there supporting, and also have an opportunity for folks to get jobs there in all of these new ventures.
Yeah, and there's still a lot of great old buildings there too.
Yeah.
The real classic Boston buildings that are beautiful.
I don't know if it was mentioned, but the theme, it seems to me, or one of the central themes, was the theme in the piece that David Scharfenberg wrote that we were discussing the other day about Upham's Corner.
Yeah.
And I think the mantra was, I hope I get it right, develop without disperse.
Yes.
Meaning you don't want to do a South End or a JP kind of thing.
Yes, that's right.
Where you essentially drive out all low-income people, particularly people of color. But it seems that that's part of a center part of the guiding principle of these developers.
And a lot of job opportunities for people.
It's really a great thing.
Yeah.
We're going to have some of the major players. Well, we've had Richard Taylor on the show. We should have him on again. We'll talk about it. On a more depressing note, a producer for a morning show on WEI was suspended for a week the other day because of, I think it's fair to say, a racist comment he made. We were discussing the same topic, the proposal by Ricardo Arroyo to have a hearing, he's a city councilor in Boston, to ban nips, which are the small bottles of alcohol. And here is just a snippet of the conversation that followed. The first voice is a woman co-host. The last voice you'll hear is the producer in question, who has since been suspended.
It begs the question, top 5 nips.
Oh, yes, that's a great one.
Because Dr. McGillicuddy's, I think, is number 1 or 2. Screwball also up there.
I'd probably go Mina Kimes.
Mina Kimes is a woman who is wildly respected on ESPN. Fill in a few more blanks in this pathetic story.
Well, she's also Korean, and some may know the ethnic slur for Asian people is nips, Japanese specifically. So there you have it. I mean, what was that about? Now, he says he was trying to say Mina Kunis, which I don't get the joke, but then maybe I'm missing something.
I totally get it. Not only did he say this in his explanation, the corporate entity here said prior to the suspended producer that he really meant Mila Kunis. He didn't mean the Korean American broadcaster on ESPN. So what goes unsaid is he didn't really mean to be racist. Right. He meant to be misogynistic. Right. I mean, he obviously is talking about her body in the latter situation, and it just lay there. And with the exception of, good for Chad Finn, who writes in the Boston Globe, who actually picked up on the fact, is that better than the racism that was in her in the first thing? And I went back and listened to the tape, and there are a couple of things that bear noting. This guy was suspended, and I think probably feels he's lucky he wasn't fired for this. Every other person on the show, when he made this comment about nips and mentioned this Korean woman, who we obviously thought was Japanese, I assume, didn't say a word. Another producer laughed. What about them? I mean, they're sort of collaborators. And the other part of this is, I listen to a lot of talk radio. I mean, like 5 minutes of this, 5 minutes of that. You sort of get a feel, and some days it makes you feel good because someone's worse than you. Some days you're depressed because they're a lot more talented than you are. Sports radio, and some shows in particular, are the most outspoken. Whenever an athlete in town, particularly a black athlete, so like Jaylen Brown, the New York Times, the New York Times the other day, an interview that he did out of Houston, we were discussing with Trenny Casey, talked about racism in Boston. Have you felt it? Yeah, I have. In terms of buying a home, trying to get a business together. These are the most outspoken people to say, I haven't seen racism. That's right. I haven't seen any of these kinds of things. They're the people who are not only using a racist slur like this, and the others tolerating it. So I don't want to see anybody get screwed unless they really deserve to get screwed. But this is a big story, and particularly in a place like Boston.
Now, I have to say, hasn't this location, this place been kind of an incubator for these kinds of remarks in the past?
Well, there was the famous gorilla thing with Dennis and Callahan many years ago. When they compared the gorilla that escaped to a Metco kid, and they got suspended for that.
Yeah, and it wasn't too long ago that in this very library we were having a community discussion about the kind of slurs made against a Chinese agent, and I'm sorry I don't remember the actual.
It's Don Yee, who was made by another person on this station.
Right.
Don Yee is the agent for Tom Brady, by the way.
Right. Yeah. So I'm just like, it's what lawyers call, you should know this, you're a lawyer,
sort of
pattern and practice.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what I look at it, and I wonder, what's this all about? And obviously it's working for them, because you can suspend and go back to work, and you can say, I meant to say something else, and it's okay.
When you say it's working, they're actually getting crushed by the other radio station.
Yeah.
But there's a host on the other sports radio station who made a comment when his co-host, your former colleague at the Herald, Felger, was sitting in a room with some black men behind. He made a comment about how he should watch out, intending to be a joke.
I think it was Maserati, the other guy.
Yeah, the other guy on the show. The point, again, I'd be upset by this. I'm going to stop saying it after this, but I bore people. I'd be upset by the underlying acts themselves, if that's all there was, and all is an understatement. I'm doubly upset because there is no more piece of the media infrastructure in Massachusetts that is more in denial about racism in general than sports radio. And so,
Well, it certainly, it comes up because every time I mention that kind of stuff, when some incident like this happens, they go, it never happens. What are you talking about?
I've never heard it. I've never heard it in Boston.
You made it up.
Exactly. In any case, we're talking to Callie Crossley.
So people may remember E. Jean Carroll accused Donald Trump of taking her into a dressing room at Bergdorf Goodman and violently raping her many years ago. Donald Trump made these obnoxious remarks about how she's not my type.
What a line.
And forcing E. Jean Carroll to produce a photograph of herself at the age that this happened. And she, not that that has anything to do with it, but she was so humiliated by his constantly insulting her. She posted a picture of herself at the age she was when this allegedly happened. Well, the former president has lost his efforts to keep key evidence out of this. Is not a criminal trial, it's a civil trial, but it's supposed to start next month. Just yet another one of these legal problems that the former president is suffering. And I think the testimony that's going to be allowed is going to hurt him.
Well, this is interesting because they're allowing in that Access Hollywood tape, if people remember, which came out very shortly before the election, when he said he can just grab anybody in various parts of women in various parts and kiss them if he wants to because he's a celebrity. And it was bad, and he passed it off as locker room talk, and people said, oh, boys will be boys, and he went on. But they're allowing that, and they're also allowing two other women who made sexual abuse claims against him to testify. So that's huge.
Which doesn't always happen.
No, it doesn't.
Well, it didn't happen in the Anita Hill hearing.
It didn't happen, or in the William Kennedy Smith case from years ago. But it did happen in the Bill Cosby case to a certain degree. Not all this, dozens of women accused him, but a few got in, and these are two women that are going to get in. So I don't know, Mr. Attorney. I mean, you're supposed to not be tried for your past crimes.
It's a pattern of conduct. That's what the judge.
Pattern and practice.
So I think that is a wonderful step forward because very often that's not allowed.
No, you know what I took away from this, because as we've also discussed, as these cases come up, it's so hard to go back if you're the victim of this and rehash this and re-traumatize. And what has happened, and understandably so, for a lot of women who've gone forward, they get to a certain point, they keep getting rejected or keep saying no, you can't proceed, and they say, okay, fine. This woman,
she's tough.
Okay, she said, oh no, I don't care what, and he's called her some names that it's ridiculous. And oh, by the way, the whole thing about she's not my type, and he was asked to identify her.
This is the best.
Oh, yeah.
Gotta tell people.
This is crazy. So they're doing the deposition, and he was given a sheet of, I guess, pictures of various women, including her, and asked to identify her, and he picked his ex-wife.
thought it was
one
his
of his
ex-wife.
ex-wives.
Yeah. So I guess,
but not his type. But,
yeah, I guess
yeah,
I guess she was his type. It'd be very interesting to see how this case goes. Rape cases are very, very difficult.
Yes,
but
they
this
are.
is a civil one.
Yeah.
So it's a lower standard than the criminal one, and I'm hoping that she prevails.
Well, if she does
credit.
prevail, this is the same tired question I ask you almost every other day, Marjorie. She prevails. She's found in a civil trial, the jury concludes that yes, Donald Trump raped this woman. How many votes does he lose out of his 75 million people?
Oh, probably none.
3, a dozen?
I don't know.
Probably none.
I don't know. He's up to 24 women now at this point. I think if there haven't been a few, accused him of sexual misconduct,
harassment, assault.
But guess what? Probably none on the vote thing. I'm going to look at it a different way. This is the 5th anniversary of Me Too. So I'm going to look at it as that's precedent setting. And that maybe is encouraging for some other women who are out there who have held it in or didn't feel courageous enough. And Jean Carroll has said, I'm going to, if I can, set this precedent.
Yeah, good for her. Good for her.
Well, by the way, on that note, I'm so glad you said that. Not only has that been the experience in Me Too, Mitchell Garabedian, as we've talked to a lot of times, who's one of the incredibly dedicated lawyers who's represented hundreds, if not thousands, of people abused by priests. And he says after every press conference, when an individual, after years and years, has the courage to tell his or her story, that his phone rings off the hook because that courage is transferred to other people who have been treated poorly. You're totally right. So can we go to an upbeat story?
Yeah, sure.
Now, one of Marjorie's favorite people is Rupert Murdoch, as I'm sure you know, who's done a lot of wonderful things.
Yeah.
And he deserves happiness. Marjorie's always said this.
That's right.
And apparently at the ripe old age...
It's escaped him time and time again, apparently.
Now at 92 years old...
92.
He's about to get married for only the 5th time.
True love at last.
But this time he apparently really means it.
Yep.
He's really happy. He's marrying like a kid, a 66-year-old.
That's right.
So what do you think about this coming together?
Well, hold on. You're burying the lead here.
What's that?
The story, and it's really cleverly written by Zoe Williams in The Guardian, is saying a woman, imagine if this was a woman marrying for the 5th time at 92 years old. The ridicule would be from coast to coast, correct?
In his papers.
In his papers, that's right.
Yeah.
We couldn't even, can a 92-year-old woman even breathe, never mind get married for the 5th time? And yet, here he is.
Yep, there he is.
Yeah, exactly.
So first I need to say, it really is none of our business. Now, having said that, let me just judge.
Good. Exactly.
That's right.
I'm with you.
Let me full on judge. Are you kidding me?
Which part?
92.
I mean, listen, he can do whatever he wants. I am really more interested in Ann Leslie Smith.
Yeah.
This is the woman who he's about to marry. She says they have, similar beliefs, and she speaks his language. And she, by the way, in case anybody wanted to know, she has her own money, not his level of money, but she's got her own money. So stop with the gold digging, many of you are
We
thinking.
have sound. You want to hear sound from her?
Yeah, sure.
We have the new wife, or the soon-to-be wife. Here's what she had to say about the basis of their relationship. It's quite beautiful.
People say, oh, but he's so much older than you. And you know what? I'm the one having to push him away. Yeah, we both have so much in common. We both love soup. And we love the outdoors. We love snow peas and talking and not talking. We could not talk or talk forever.
This must be a
and
joke.
still find things to not talk about.
Of course, that is the great Jennifer Coolidge in Best in Show, when her character, who's about 25-year-old, marries a comatose, like 90-year-old guy. One of the funniest scenes in history. So we wish. So you were judgmental, is the bottom line.
Yeah, I mean, I was just because his newspapers are famous for judgmental for women, particularly.
Yes,
so this
they have
is
naked. They have naked women in one of those tabloids.
In the
or
British
maybe it's
one?
just topless, but they have like on page 4, she's all down the side of a tabloid. And he's ruined Australia with the power of his. Never mind here with Fox News and the New York Post with these climate change denying attacks and diatribes and all this kind of stuff. But he says that they're going to spend the second half of their lives together.
I mean, I really do think actually that
That's what he said. The second half. He's 92.
He's going to make it to 184.
Apparently.
Yeah.
I think it's really interesting when somebody is he's obviously very confident, but, has a very positive outlook on his next chapter. So
he does.
He
does.
Go for it.
And you think the wife number 3 was Jerry Hall, who, of course, was
Mick Jagger's
with
wife.
Mick Jagger. Were they actually married, or did they just have a bunch of children?
Married. They were married.
Okay, they were married.
Well, I just want to emphasize a woman has her own money. Because
she does.
As I say to my friends, I've said many times over the years, should you see me walking down the street with someone that, perhaps you would not guess that I would be with, your next question to me should be, when does the private jet leave?
Exactly.
That's all. I'll just put it out there.
And does he like soup too? I think
I'll
is the
just
next
put it out there
question.
now. Just,
Okay.
So, Callie, can we, since we really had a wildly up moment there, let's talk about food for a couple of seconds. When one of our colleagues said, you should talk on the show with Callie today about the fact that Hershey's, which obviously is famous for chocolate, is getting into the salty snack business, my response to our producer was, nobody cares about Hershey's salty snacks. To which my producer said, one person cares about Hershey's salty snacks, and she's sitting there in green. Okay, what do you care about?
And 5 billion sales later, other people cared about it too. They acquired Skinny Pop and also the Pirate Booty. Skinny Pop is so delicious. It has virtually no bad stuff in it, and you could just eat it. So I think they're very clever in sort of mixing their sweet reputation, their well-known sweet reputation, with these other salty snacks, and it's now a huge part of their business. So, and they're in some instances trying to do a mix. So, for example, they'll have some popcorn where they might drizzle some chocolate on it or whatever. But I just gotta say, just a Skinny Pop
is great.
Oh my God, it's good.
Did you even know Hershey's made Skinny Pop? I didn't know.
Well, she did, obviously.
I just thought it was interesting that, this iconic candy company is now out front in the snacks. And have you had Pirate's Booty?
I have.
Those puffs are delicious.
They are?
Yeah.
I've not.
Yeah.
Or I haven't had Dot's Homestyle pretzels
now that
either.
I haven't had that, but people say that's good. I have not had that.
They're apparently selling right and left, fast-growing Dot's Homestyle pretzels. So we have 3 things to try: Pirate's Booty, Skinny Pop, and the Homestyle pretzels.
No
Jim.
trans fats. I mean, I'm reading the content. You're
good.
right. It's actually pretty healthy kind of thing.
And so after you've stuffed your face with the Hershey candy bars, you can say, you know what? I think I'll have a Skinny Pop.
Skinny Pop, exactly.
Is a Skinny Pop salty at least?
Yeah, it has a little salt. It's not heavily salted though. It's really it's just really good. It's delish.
So what's on your show this week?
What's on my show this week? We are doing, we're bringing back early because this is what you do when you have nearly 600 days before the 2024 presidential election. You start bringing back your New Hampshire insider. So I have a couple of people that I like to comment all along on the lead up to the presidential race, and we start early, obviously. And so this is
Arnie?
Arnie's
Arnie's great. Arnie Arneson. Yeah, she's terrific.
Yeah, so we want to do that. Did I do that? No, you know what? That's not what I'm doing this week.
Yeah, I thought I just heard Arnie Arneson.
I think that was last week,
That's right.
actually.
Yeah. No. Okay, start again.
Okay.
This is how tired I am. All right. I am doing my fabulous regional roundtable, okay? Looking around in the region about issues that are going on and interesting stories. For one, David Cicilline, who has been the congressperson for Rhode Island, just abruptly announced he was leaving. He's going over to the Rhode Island Foundation.
Yeah,
that's a big job for him, but it's a real mix-up for Democratic politics.
He's a very talented politician.
Exactly. So it's a real mix-up for the Democratic politics and what that's going to mean. Also talking about all of the issues with the right whales and the ropeless new technique that I thought was great, but a lot of people don't really care for that. And the fact that, didn't you think that the one project that the feds would absolutely pay for would be the Cape Cod bridges?
Yeah.
And so they said, no, so what's going to happen now? So it's a whole conundrum there.
Biden has some money in his budget, but the fact that we have some of the most powerful members of Congress, and we've been turned down, 2 times, I think, so far?
This is seriously a need.
Yeah.
That bridge is
Are you not nervous? I mean, you drive over it quite a lot.
I am a nervous wreck, and I try to
Yeah.
avoid traffic because it's bad enough to go over it at all. But if you are sitting in traffic,
Hello.
and it takes you like
Any
6
weekend-
or 7 minutes to get
Yes.
across the bridge,
Yes,
I mean, all I can
Sagamore
do is
yeah.
envision myself going right into the Cape Cod Canal,
Yeah,
over the
tell
side.
me about it.
Yeah, the bridge was 1933, I believe.
This is my lifeline to Martha's Vineyard. This is very important. Get on it, Feds.
But apparently
Yeah.
what they are going to do when they do get around to it, which is great, they're going to
Maybe.
build one next door
Well, that's
to
what's
the
one
one
plan.
that's standing.
But when the feds pull, and the Army Corps of Engineers said, no, we don't want to do it anymore. I mean, it's all up in the air now. So all of those plans, we don't know what's going to happen. So that's very important.
Yeah, and also it's so narrow.
It is very narrow.
It's really nerve-wracking to
It
drive
is.
across that bridge in
So,
general.
and the other thing I would just want to, there's a couple other things. Great idea in New Hampshire at a high school to train young people for jobs in the outdoor tourism industry, which is booming there. Makes sense. A lot of jobs, but with real skills about how for year-round, not just seasonal.
Yeah.
So that's a wonderful thing too. And sadly, we have more examples of housing shortage on Martha's Vineyard. So we'll be talking about that, and then I'm doing because we're into candy these days, I'm doing a repeat on one of my favorite segments about Necco candy wafers.
Kelly, do they do a lot of, we provide housing for our seasonal workforce in Martha's Vineyard? Because if they don't do that, how the heck are they going to afford?
Well, the story is that the new manager of the Lapels Cleaning, which was on island, dry cleaning, and his young family had to turn down the job and walk away because they couldn't find housing. So that business closed. So now the only way to get cleaning is from it's benefit to another company that delivers, but they have to come on island. And so as
they bring your clothes over in the ferry,
they have to come over on the ferry. And
God.
just wait till the summer when it gets really crowded. They've got to negotiate all of that. Plus the turnaround time is obviously a little longer than it would be. So housing this is like the second or third story that we know about. There's many more of people who had jobs, the kind of jobs you want them to have, teachers, principals, dry cleaner, owners and operators who cannot find housing and have to leave.
By the way, it's happening in Provincetown too.
Yeah,
Similar
I mean,
sort
this
of
is
things,
really,
yeah.
exactly, because this is my regional roundtable, so the Ted Nisi was talking to me about that as well. So this is...
Ted's great.
Yes,
great.
yes. This is
Okay, well, I hope you can
Good to see you, Callie.
rest up this weekend, Callie. You've had a tough couple of days here.
Callie Crossley, thank you so much.
Callie Crossley
Appreciate
is
it.
host of Under the Radar with Callie Crossley, which you can catch Sunday nights right here at 89.7 at 6 o'clock, and it reruns Thursday night at 9 o'clock, which is when I listened to it just last
Did
night.
she bump us from night?
She bumped us. She did. She bumped
So why
us.
are you promoting something that bumped us?
Well, because I wanted to hear about...
She's collegial.
That's right. I'm collegial. That's
That's
exactly
one of
right.
us.
She's also the host of Basic Black, which airs Friday nights at 7:30. You can also hear Callie's commentaries on Mondays for GBH's Morning Edition. Thank you very much,
Good to see you,
Callie.
Thank you.
Okay, coming up. We've learned a lot about Gisele Bündchen over the years. Most of us didn't know she communes with squirrels, among other unusual activities. But there's a new profile of her in Vanity Fair. We're going to talk about that. And we're going to talk about what we learned from her ex-husband, that he apparently has a soft spot for the poetry of Ralph Waldo Emerson. Sue O'Connell joins us for a deep dive, as we say, into Gisele and Tom, the post-divorce years. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH, broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library and streaming on Facebook.com/GBH News and YouTube.com/GBH News.
In a few weeks, the main stage at the music festival Coachella will feature an artist singing entirely in Arabic. And Eliana is not the only Arab musician blowing up right now.
What's different this time around is that, these artists are kind of using an updated sound.
Arabic music is on the brink of a global breakthrough. More on All Things Considered from NPR News.
Today at 4, here on GBH News 89.7.
Support for GBH comes from you. And the Boston Speakers Series, announcing its upcoming season at Symphony Hall for 7 evenings featuring Jane Fonda, Van Jones, former Ukraine Ambassador Marie Yovanovitch, and presidential historian Michael Beschloss. BostonSpeakers.org. And the Handel and Haydn Society. Bach's music comes to life as H&H performs his soul-stirring Easter Oratorio, featuring soloists from across the globe, March 31st and April 2nd at Symphony Hall. Tickets at handelandhaydn.org.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy and Marjorie. And who is this now? Oh, yeah. We've all been there. Oh, wait a second. I was supposed to say streaming on Facebook.com.
That's right.
/GBH News. And what's the other thing? YouTube.com/GBH News. I am totally discombobulated. Here's media maven Sue O'Connell. Sue is the co-publisher of Bay Windows and the South End News and contributor to Current on NBCLX and NECN. Hey, Sue O'Connell.
It's exhausting. Hi, how are you?
It is exhausting. Yeah, for us, too, yeah. Hi.
So, Sue O'Connell.
By the way, we were having a debate the other day, and I'm sorry to interrupt you.
It's okay, go ahead.
Off the air.
Mm-hmm.
Your mother was a bookie or your grandmother was?
My grandmother was a bookie.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's
Yes.
what I said.
Yes.
Okay.
My mother worked for a traveling rodeo. I can
that's
see
what
how
it
you would
was,
get
yes.
that confused. She worked for a traveling rodeo through
Grandmother
the West.
was the bookie,
It was a wild
traveling
and
rodeo was the
woolly
mother.
childhood over there at
Okay.
Revere.
Thank you.
Your grandmother would be very upset about the turn of events with legalized betting because it would have cost her
Put
some
her out of
money,
business.
right?
Well, I'm not sure that that's actually true. I know that illegal gambling drops when there are legal opportunities, but I'm not sure that means the business is
Okay, so you can still do a little.
I believe so.
Little trip down to your local
Sounds
bar
like
room and.
that's not just an opinion. This
Yeah.
one sounds
No,
like
and I was
to
talking
me.
about this with a friend. I realized so many kids I grew up with were the children of bookies.
Well,
in my hometown. Yes.
It was,
They did very well.
There's a woman who recently wrote a book about it called The Numbers, I think, and it was from her perspective in Chicago from African American communities where it actually was a revenue source.
Yes.
It was an off-the-books, obviously,
yes.
business as opposed to just
Sent the
fun.
kids to college.
Yep.
On the
Yep.
bookie proceeds. So anyway, we were talking earlier with listeners about this Tallahassee, Florida principal who lost her job in a charter school that's supposed to be focusing on classical liberal arts education because the sixth graders saw a picture of Michelangelo's David, and David is, of course, naked, and that was it. The principal was out.
Yeah. You know who is the least qualified to be in charge of children's education?
Who's that?
Parents.
Yes.
I'm with you. I'm with you.
So Ruby and I were in.
Ruby would be your daughter.
My daughter. We were in Italy and saw Michelangelo, the statue in Florence, and there are lots of little kids that are there from all over the world looking at the statue and looking at the other art that doesn't have any clothes on it on a regular basis.
It's quite common.
Nobody signed any releases. There they were with their school trips. And on the other hand, I understand that this superintendent talks about how the permission slip to go home, there was a miscommunication, takes responsibility for that. The parents were not alerted that the children would be seeing this work of art, which you can see on just about any porn site that the sixth graders are probably visiting without their parents knowing about.
Exactly.
That's a very good point we didn't make.
It just really is the amount of sexual imagery, both graphic and completely criminal and inappropriate for children, and just kind of everyday sexual imagery that kids see compared to Michelangelo. The outrage is just ridiculous. Now, I'll also say that having been forced to have to homeschool Ruby due to illness, I was in a homeschool parenting group, which you can imagine where this is going. And one of the courses in English, they were writing about Greek mythology. Right? Common. We all did it. We all had Greek and Roman mythology. And one of the parents in the Facebook group that I was on, particular to Ruby's school and class, was outraged that we were teaching a different religion in the English literature course about the Greek gods. Outraged.
Oh, my God.
And nothing you could say to this woman, this mother, about how, it's classical Greek literature, it's myths. And then I asked her if her kid had seen Hercules on Disney. I mean, it's just outrageous. And just to go off on this rant, we were just, because you always make fun of Jim for traveling internationally, so I want to give him a little cover right now.
Thank
so when
you.
we were in Greece last year, Ruby and I were in Greece, and we had a tour guide who every time she went to something like, this is Hercules' arch or whatever the heck it was, she would have to say, now Hercules is a myth.
Oh my God.
And I looked at her at one point and I said, well, I know Hercules is a myth. And she said, most Americans don't. Okay? So in Florida, if they're watching in Florida, they really need to be less worried about, Michelangelo being naked and permission slips, and a little bit more worried about how the parents probably need to go back to get a little education.
Yeah, I'm glad what you said about the parents not knowing. Cause
they don't know. We don't know.
Educators have studied curriculum. They've studied how to teach
and
all
what
these
happens?
things. And it's like, it's a little obnoxious to think that you know better than
Listen,
these.
but when do you care? You care about when your kids are in school, right? So this happens. If you're on a board of a school or a school committee, you care when your kids are in school. And as soon as your kids are out, you stop caring. And then these poor administrators and school committees get this fresh-faced bunch of parents that come in that think they know everything, and then they leave. And that's part of the reason the consistency of education doesn't happen. Jim, I interrupted you.
No, you didn't. Can we quickly, only because it really is aggravating the hell out of me, but since we've talked about Don't Say Gay laws so frequently with you, give a quick update on what the expansion proposal is, and then we're going to leave Florida for the rest of the show.
Yeah, well, you would like to leave Florida, but Governor Ron DeSantis, who may or may not be most likely running for president, who wants to make America just like Florida, is expanding the Don't Say Gay, which means teachers were not allowed to speak about sexual orientation or gender expression from kindergarten to third grade. He's expanding it to high school, so kindergarten to high school. And it's most likely going to pass because of the way that the laws get done in Florida. That means that nothing about gender expression. Now, I want to break this down. People can understand about gay, right? You can't say gay. You can't talk about parents who may be lesbian or gay. You can't talk about Harvey Milk. You can't talk about Barney Frank. You can't talk about
Harvey
Tammy
Milk
Baldwin.
from San Francisco, who was murdered.
Yep. Any historic or lawmaker can't talk about Pete Buttigieg. You can't talk about Pete Buttigieg's husband. None of those things will be taught in Florida or even mentioned. If someone says, hey, is Pete Buttigieg married to a man? Can't talk about it.
Or if you're a young student, ask the teacher a question about his or her life.
Right, cannot
and they're the
answer.
same-sex relation. Right.
It also, when it comes to gender expression, if they're looking at historical pictures and women are wearing dresses, and a gender expression has changed so much over the years, if we talk about Hillary Clinton and Pantsuit Nation, are they allowed to talk about how women historically were not allowed to wear pants and how the gender issues of political campaigns are, these are all the things that they're not going to be able to talk about in Florida, and it's coming to a city near you. So
yeah, not to mention what it does to gay kids who are kind of outlaws in the ninth grade or whatever, because so many gay kids do identify quite early.
It's not the kids obviously should be the first concern, but if you read interviews with teachers who have been in the system, and I'm sure both of you have, for decades in Florida, the chilling effect of this, what they're not willing to talk about, which probably isn't covered by the law, but they're afraid because of the oversight, like the guy who I think was chair of the board of this school we talked about, called it pornography. Right. David, the most famous statue on the planet.
And the guy that showed up in a gladiator skirt to argue about this. Was that Florida? I don't even know where he was. He shows up. You can argue that gladiators are dressed in gender inappropriate outfits, right? They're dressed in kilts for the most part. And he shows up dressed like that to argue about drag
Sean
queens.
Connery used to wear the skirt all the time because he was from Scotland.
Can we do this? I'm going to do you a favor.
Let's get down to brass tacks here.
I said to Marjorie, Marjorie, for people who always ask us, how do you plan the show? The one thing we do, everything is extemporaneous, except when we decide what the topics are, we try to put them in order. And Marjorie and I had a little tiff this morning, and I said, we cannot do Gisele Bündchen and Tom Brady right at the top.
Okay.
And I listed the things we got to do first, but because I'm in a better mood than I was this morning, take it away,
And I know you're
Marjorie.
all waiting for Attorney General over there to come on, but we have to talk about
This is a
Gisele
little
and Tom
embarrassing.
Brady.
Andrea Campbell's here.
Yeah,
We're going to talk about
All right.
Bündchen and Brady's
Priorities,
divorce.
Attorney General, priorities, please.
It's very important. It's very important.
Go ahead, Marjorie.
So there was this big. I think what happens is if you're on the cover of Vanity Fair, then you have to agree to do a big interview with Vanity Fair.
Yeah.
And Gisele Bündchen was on the cover of Vanity Fair, looking spectacular as always, and she did an interview in which she talked rather unusually about how she communes with birds and butterflies and squirrels. And she talked about her spectacular place down there in Costa Rica, which she lives. I mean, they have this expanse with everything possibly there. They have a pickleball court, Jim.
I saw that.
Pickleball court
I read the
as
whole
well.
damn article,
you know,
Marjorie.
hot tubs, wet tubs, Reiki studios, yoga studios.
Okay.
But the important thing is, I thought that Giselle was very classy, talking about her divorce from Tom. She denies she's involved with the younger jiu-jitsu teacher. She says she's not involved with him or with some billionaire that lives near Tom. She says she wants all Tom's dreams to come true. And she says the divorce was like a death and a rebirth. So what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think Giselle actually is pretty classy. I think that she has all along, maintained a distance from the hubbub that Tom got himself involved in. Remember when he had the Make America Great hat?
That's right.
And she came out and made a statement about being an immigrant and being an immigrant in America. So, I can't imagine having to go through any divorce and then having to talk about it and have everybody ask about it and have us talk about it.
Like
but she's
Marjorie.
really wealthy,
That's right.
So I imagine that we should be allowed to
talk
do
about
it whatever we want.
exactly.
But I think Giselle has been, you guys were talking earlier about people show themselves who they are when they say the same thing over and over again. And I think we can all agree that Giselle has taken the high road.
She's taken the high
on
road
a regular basis, and
she debunked a lot of our theories.
I don't know that she's telling the truth on that front, though.
What did she say?
She said it wasn't Brady's U-turn out of retirement that caused the marriage to fall apart. She said these things come, there are many parts, moving parts.
You know when someone has done the last straw and you just don't have it in you anymore to fight about it. So you're not going to say, because they left that food on the stove one last time.
Could
that
be.
was why she just
You're
gave
also
up.
leaving out, even after they separated, and I think maybe after they divorced, I can't believe I know this. It's rather humiliating. I did read it's like a 20,000 word piece.
It's a great piece.
That she defended him for his horrible performance in what might be his final game loss to Dallas, saying the offensive line let him down.
Right.
Which is not only a great line, I mean, her defense of him. Do you remember what she said after he lost a Super Bowl several cycles ago?
No.
And a receiver, was it Wes Welker, one of the great receivers, thank you, John Parker, in my ear, dropped the ball. Her response after the game in the interview is he can't throw and catch the effing ball at the same time.
That's right.
So she's a defender,
Yes,
whether
defender.
she's married or not married.
That's right. And
is this enough now or
no?
not?
I just want to point out that this is...
Stand by, Attorney General. Stand by, please.
They do a big description of her house and how spectacular it is. Then we move on, and this is written by Michelle Ruiz in the
Vanity Fair.
In Vanity Fair.
Yeah.
To her shed. It is a magnificent shed.
It's a she shed.
Oh, that's right. All clean blonde wood lines of her own design, flanked by banana and papaya trees, a cold plunge pool, and a hot tub for one carved into the ground outside. It's her 900 square foot little house with her bedroom 100% off the grid. And this astute reporter rushes over to see what Giselle has in her bookshelf, and she has titles like Sextrology, the astrology of sex and the sexes, and the miracle of water. And she talks about how she wants to keep everything off the grid, and she shows the reporter her snowflake crystals and H2O, and she talks about creating a peaceful world of love and understanding for everybody.
Good for her.
Good for her.
Good for her.
By the way, I want to be clear from behind the scenes. Marjorie wanted to do this, and obviously we're doing this. I wanted to discuss former Democrat Kirsten Sinema saying that at lunches with her former fellow Democrats, it was like watching old dudes eating Jell-O. That's what she said about the Democratic senators.
Ron DeSantis, where there were reports that he ate pudding with his fingers.
3 fingers.
3 fingers.
Yes,
so that's just where we're going with that.
Now, I'm going to end this conversation right now.
Okay.
By saying the Globe does a story that I don't get. In light of the fact that even if she's not telling the truth, we all agree Giselle Bündchen was quite classy.
Right.
Yes?
Very classy.
Okay. Travis Anderson writes a piece and says that Tom Brady, he used to be the quarterback for the Patriots, for those who missed that, posts on Instagram right after this Vanity Fair thing, a quote from Ralph Waldo Emerson.
Lovely quote.
About success. And the thing I don't get, but this is a serious question, sort of. It says, what is success? To laugh often, to win the respect. It's all positive things. And then one parenthetical in the middle is, a reference to the betrayal of false friends.
And this is Emerson, by the way.
Oh, did I say Emerson?
Yes,
I meant
but
to. I'm sorry.
this is like one little small part of this much larger quote.
And the conclusion in the Globe reporter, Travis Anderson, was that's the line that Tom Brady was directing at his former wife, the betrayal of false friends. You're shaking your head.
No,
What do you think?
I don't think so. I mean, I'm happy to think that Tom Brady read the entire quote before he posted it. That makes me feel good about life. Just like Giselle probably had a designer pick those books out for her and put them in her little she shed. He may actually have seen this and said, "Oh, it means something to me. I'm going to post it." I don't think it had anything to do with Giselle.
I want to tell you that. Speaking of the she shed,
Do you know what sextrology is?
Sextrology?
I don't know.
Do you know? Well, if this airs in Florida, I can't tell you.
Did I ever tell you, speaking of the she shed, my uncle, who I loved, who was sort of my surrogate father, did I ever tell you the story? Was sort of, he didn't marry till late in life, he was a doctor, and he married a much younger woman. And he had a lot of money. I don't mean like a zillionaire, but he had a lot of money. Did I ever tell you this story? And she decided when they moved to a much larger house that she wanted to have a library in the house, because this is a true story. And so he takes her to a bookstore to buy books. And they go into the bookstore, and she says to the bookseller, "I'll take 5 of the red ones, 6 of the blue ones, 5." Well, that's really
true.
the whole story.
You can actually hire designers who do that.
You can?
Yes.
Now, here is the deal, what we're going to do. We're going to ask the audience to make a decision here, which we rarely do, because this show is, believe me, run by me and Marjorie. You have a choice. You can either hear Sue talk about Giselle Bundchen and Tom Brady for 5 more minutes. That's one option. Don't vote yet. Or you can hear an extra 5 minutes of the new Attorney General of the Commonwealth, Andrea Campbell. Which would you prefer? I think the answer is hit the road, Sue.
Fine, thank you. Okay.
Sue O'Connell, current LX, whatever it is. We love Sue O'Connell.
I get paid the same. It all works out. Don't worry.
We didn't get to talk about Giselle rescuing the little bird.
Exactly, we didn't. Exactly
with its broken
my
little
point.
claw.
It was a robin, actually.
Held it in well, a robin's a bird. Held it in its hands, and the bird flew away. At which point Giselle said, "I too want to spread my wings and fly."
Oh boy, that is lovely.
Okay.
Sue O'Connell.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you
We've been
very
speaking
much.
with our media maven, Sue O'Connell.
That's right.
Co-publisher of Bay Windows and the South End News, contributor current on NBC, LX, NECN, granddaughter of a bookie and daughter of a rodeo, whatever your mother was doing with a rodeo there. What was she doing with a rodeo? Traveling rodeo show? I tell
Her
you.
distant cousin was a sexologist, or whatever that thing was. A couple of minutes. I don't even know what it is.
Sextrologist, Jim.
Whatever.
Sextrologist.
Sorry.
Anyway, we are going to talk to the Attorney General of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Andrea Joy Campbell is next. She's going to take our questions and yours for Ask the Attorney General. If you want to talk to the Attorney General or get her to answer your text, 877-301-8970. 877-301-8970. You're listening to Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH, streaming on Facebook.com/GBH News and YouTube.com/GBH News.
I am Tibisay Sea, host of a podcast in Spanish about healthcare for Latinos. ¿Por qué los latinos tenemos tantas barreras para acceder a la salud de calidad en este país? La segunda temporada de Salud ya está aquí y te invitamos a escuchar un nuevo episodio cada sábado a las 9:30 de la mañana por 89.7 GBH. Listen tomorrow morning at 9:30 on GBH 89.7 o donde sea que escuchas tus podcasts.
Funding for our programs comes from you and Rockland Trust Bank. Their team is dedicated to bringing the vision of your business to life, providing support and advice tailored to your specific goals. Rockland Trust Bank, where each relationship matters. Member FDIC. And the members of the Massachusetts Teachers Association, proud to support high-quality programming on public radio. The MTA, over 175 years of fighting for the public schools and colleges our communities deserve. massteacher.org.
Trusted. Local. News. You're listening to 89.7 WGBH, HD1 Boston, online at gbhnews.org. GBH News with NPR. What matters to you.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy and Marge Regan. We are live at the Boston Public Library, streaming at facebook.com/GBH News and youtube.com/GBH News. Now for her second appearance. That's right, as Attorney General. We're joined by Andrea Campbell for Ask the AG. Our lines are open. You can call her, text her at 877-301-8970, or if you go and say hello to one of our colleagues who is not sitting there, there's Annie back. Hi, Annie, waving her hand. She'll be sitting at that table. If you're in the audience and have a question or a thought for the Attorney General, you can ask her directly from here by going over to Annie at the table. Attorney General, it's good to see you. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you. It's great to be here. Oh, thank you, everyone. And how you kicked her off was so wrong.
That's right. I feel bad. You know, before we start, on a serious note, you were originally going to be here 11 to 12. You had a delay till 1 to 2. I know you wanted to share with us where you were this morning.
Yeah, I was actually coming from Worcester, a officer who passed away in Worcester, who was a sergeant, David Leto. So it was just sad. He leaves behind a wife and 2 kids and just an incredible community. So Worcester turned out, and an officer who worked with folks in the community, young people, was a diversity inclusion officer. And so people were working hard every day, including folks in law enforcement. And just wanted to be there to support the community.
He was 42, is that what
he
I read?
Was 42.
Yeah, young man. And the
really
children
sad.
were pretty young as well.
Yeah. Well, we're glad you made it.
Yeah,
Thank you so
count
much
your
for being here.
blessings,
Yes, indeed.
So, Attorney General Campbell, I wanted to ask you about, you got a youth agenda here. Tell us what you're doing in terms of, we've heard these horrible stories over and over and over again about bullying, harassing, hate in school sports. What are you doing about that?
So there are some regional trainings already happening that we kicked off to deal with hate in school and in sports as well. One priority for the office, I want to stress, will be the wellness and well-being of our kids. I'm a mom of 2 young boys. There are probably several caregivers and parents in this space. Uptick in depression, anxiety, suicide or suicidal thoughts is on the rise. And so what can the AG's office do to support our young people? These trainings are in partnership with a whole host of stakeholders and school districts and in partnership with Northeastern. And they've already kicked off. They're going to be regional all across the Commonwealth, and training school administrators and others in ways in which to address bullying in the context of sports, but also thinking about how we can expand that type of work is really exciting.
Do you spend time? I mean, this is great that you're doing this, and great for all the participants.
It is great.
But in all seriousness, there's like an epidemic in the state. There was almost every couple of weeks from Wellesley fans, Duxbury kids, Danvers hockey players. I mean, I could go down a list. This wasn't an outlier here or there. There was a trend in high school sports, either fans or the young players themselves. What are people thinking this comes from?
That's right. And I actually want the office and us to frame it broader than that. Mental health concerns, it's been an epidemic in this country and in Massachusetts for a long time, long before COVID. In the context of sports, you're seeing mental health concerns, bullying, a whole bunch of things that we're actively addressing, and the office has been addressing for some time through the Civil Rights Division, the Children's Justice Unit. But I want us to seriously take a more holistic approach at looking at how we can really get folks, not just young people, adults included, access to the mental health services they deserve, address conversations and get involved in conversations around costs, access, equity, reimbursement rates, stigma. If you are feeling depression, anxiety, I was just saying this to a couple of folks in my office, there should be no shame to be able to share that in your workplace, and that you are going to get medication or all the supports that you need in a workplace, and an employer is going to support you in those efforts. There should be no stigma around that. No one should be going through those things alone, because we know it can escalate to other things. So the office can do a lot. Social media companies, big part of the work of the office as well, and will continue to be, to look at how we address mental health concerns to make sure our kids are doing well.
Speaking of social media and kids, obviously there was the TikTok hearing where there was...
Is he still testifying?
Bipartisan assault on the head of TikTok. The President of the United States has basically said, sell to an American company or I'm going to argue that you be banned. Part of the argument against TikTok is not just the national security and the lack of data privacy, but you hearken back to what Frances Hogan was saying about Instagram and her testimony and the impact on self-worth and feeling about it. What do you think the impact of a TikTok is on almost its exclusively young participants or users? And do you subscribe to the president's approach to this?
Well, obviously, you have the company exec testifying before Congress with respect to ownership of TikTok and relationship with China, privacy concerns, sharing of data. And it's too narrowly focused. Where the AG's office is focused is broader, and rightfully so. It is definitely on privacy and your personal information and how these platforms can use your information maybe against you in some way. And what they're
apart from the Chinese issue.
That's right. That's right. And what they're doing with this information, and that's not just in the context of TikTok. That's Facebook, Meta, Google, you name it. We have a whole division within the AG's office dealing with data privacy concerns. What we're also focused on in the context of social media companies, TikTok included, is the effect they're having on young people when it comes to self-worth, depression, anxiety, suicide, the ways in which they design their apps to be addictive to young people, spending hours on end on these platforms, which there are stories and reports out there that we're reviewing that sort of suggest and maybe pinpoint in more detail or evidence of it having a detrimental effect on our young people, including young girls, and an uptick in what we're seeing with respect to young girls. So this is multi-state.
Do you subscribe to the Biden ultimatum here? Are you supportive of what the president's saying? Sell or risk being banned?
I'm following a little bit more. I actually think, with all due respect to our president, focus on that, but expand the conversation. If you have TikTok there before you, it's not just TikTok. It is American-based companies, too, that are having a detrimental effect on our young people. Right now, the office is involved in a multi-state investigation with other states looking at the effect these platforms have on our young people, looking at how they're using our personal information, how they design algorithms and these apps to be addictive. And that's the broader conversation. There's a national focus, rightfully so, President, but there are local issues right here that we absolutely need to address with a sense of urgency, especially when it comes to our young people and their mental health.
I have one more thing I want to raise before we get to the calls. The line's filled up in about 30 seconds, so people do want to talk to you. We'll do this in a second. I want to do a hypothetical with you, and I know politicians hate hypotheticals, but you're sort of new to the job, so I hope you'll allow me to do this. It's hypothetical, but not that hypothetical. Let's take Kevin Hayden, who is the DA for Suffolk County. And let's assume he is rumored to be contemplating prosecuting me for something. And I say out loud how disgraceful it is, how it's a witch hunt, how there are going to be protests and violence if he comes after me. And then I go on social media and I post a photograph of Kevin Hayden's head. And next to Kevin Hayden's head is me holding a baseball bat pointing at Kevin Hayden's head. Do you know what I'm referencing? I'm referencing the post from Donald Trump with Alvin Bragg, the Manhattan DA's head, with Donald Trump holding a baseball bat directed at his head right next to it. What do you say?
And you should add, perhaps, that, all due respect, Jim, Donald Trump is a lot more followers
I'd say he is.
than
like
you
millions.
Do.
Is that a crime? If that happened in your jurisdiction, I did it to Kevin Hayden, would I be committing a crime?
It depends.
What does it depend upon?
It depends on what obviously the laws are in New York and what they are here. It depends.
Could I get away with that?
Because you're posing a hypothetical, I want to be careful in my response to your hypothetical.
Should he be able to get away with that?
Well, President Trump?
Yeah.
Well, I will say I have many concerns with President Trump and support what my AG Tish James is doing in New York with respect to Trump and going after him for fraud and other things as well. And then, of course, she made referrals and is working with Bragg, of course, because she has no criminal authority as AG in New York. So they're doing what they need to do, and I'm waiting for the indictment like everyone else. A lot of it is under secrecy, so I don't know all the details on the criminal side. Have been following it more on the civil side because of AG James. But it's a hypothetical. There are more things that you would look into. Has there been text messages or other conversations between the two parties? Has there been harassment? There's so many other things you can look into, so I don't want to respond to a hypothetical. What I will say is our office is very serious about looking at harassment or any type of assault or anything like that, and making sure that folks feel as though our office is not only responsive, but will take action when appropriate.
Fair enough. Let's get to the calls. Jocelyn, you're in Marlborough. You're on with Andrea Campbell, the Attorney General of Massachusetts. Welcome.
Hello?
Hi.
Oh, it's Jasper. I'm sorry.
Jasper, that was not even close, but thank you. My apologies. Hi, Jasper.
Nice
You're
to hear
on
you
with the
again,
Attorney
Jim.
General. Hi.
So, it's fun you guys are mentioning that because I'm an activist, and the reason I'm calling is in regards to doxing. I wanted to know what the AG's position on doxing and in terms of cyber crime and how that goes.
She broke up.
Sorry.
You asked the question again. We lost you for a second, Jasper. You said you want to know what the AG's position on doxing is. Is that what you said?
Yes, especially because it has been a concern here in Massachusetts.
How about it? Doxing.
What is doxing?
Go ahead, Jasper. Explain what you're asking about.
When people basically let a lot of personal information online,
leave
their
a lot
name
of personal.
usually.
Yes.
Yeah, they put your phone number, your address, all this kind of stuff, which frankly you can get really easily anyway. But it's to retaliate. Is that what you're talking about, Jasper?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh, I see. Again, it depends, right? There are different circumstances. My information is public just as an elected official, right? So, in essentially all of it, the things I may have deemed to be personal before are not anymore because of the public role. But I will say when folks have concerns about what is being shown up on social media platforms with respect to any type of issue and they feel like they're being harassed or something else or retaliated against and people are using that information, call us, let us know. But it's hard to actually, in going back to your hypothetical, it's hard to have specifics with respect to a response, given that every case is different. And the job of our office and our team is to make sure we're looking at the specifics, and where there are actionable items, we are taking swift action to address.
I should just say the difference between, and you, Marjorie said, and you said is available. When someone is publishing this personal information, I think the underlying premise is there's malicious intent. I mean, I think that's what Jasper is talking about.
It could be. And then we should look into that.
Jasper,
That's right.
thank you for the call. We appreciate it. Sorry I butchered your name. 877-301.
And now I know the terminology doxing.
Doxing.
Yes.
Jared at my data privacy office would be like, oh, he's an expert.
We have several people asking about these letters you get in the mail, maybe even phone calls to pressuring people to switch over their electric service with these short, low-price promo rates.
Competitive electric suppliers.
And then as soon as you sign up for the promo, according to these people who are texting, they zing you with these extremely high prices.
Mm-hmm.
What's that about?
Major issue. Folks in the Energy Environmental Bureau have been out there talking to folks to make them aware about the scams within this industry. And these are folks who not only send you letters, they knock on your doors. Actually, one day I was leaving a phone call or meeting, and someone was aggressively knocking on my door trying to sell me a new form of electricity. And the problem is the rates are higher, folks are paying higher, sometimes in the long term. They disproportionately affect low-income residents and residents of color in terms of their bills. They end up paying more. So we actually have legislation before the State House right now that I've filed since taking office to prevent these companies from enrolling new customers who are hoping to get that through this session. Critically important as we use every other tool to go after them for the scams and other consumer protection issues. But a major concern, beware of folks who are trying to sell you these things. Read the fine print on our website. We try to offer some guidance. Reach out to us, including whether it's solar companies, other things you're signing up for, and you need to have some more guidance. We offer that guidance for folks to review, which is really important before you sign a contract.
That's the voice of Andrea Campbell. She's the Attorney General of the Commonwealth, here for this hour to take your questions and thoughts. Jim in Medford, you're next on Boston Public Radio with the Attorney General. Welcome.
Hi.
Hi, Jim.
I like a lot. Thank you. Hi. Enjoy your show very much when I can catch it. A lot of times
It's even great when you don't catch it. Trust me. Go ahead.
Well,
Really
thank
good
you,
on those
Jim.
days.
Thank you, Jim, for tuning in.
What's up, Jim?
So my question is, I'm a psychologist, and I noticed during the pandemic, obviously, that, we had transitioned largely to telemedicine. Many patients, would like to pay their co-pays by, credit card or other types of balances. And, the credit card companies, or at least the processors, charge you an extra fee if you don't have the credit card in hand, I presume because there's increased risk. But throughout the pandemic, obviously nobody could have their credit card in hand, and we all had to pay that premium, and perhaps across other industries as well. And I'm wondering if there's any kind of consideration of kind of a windfall profit issue for that. Because it really, it seems like they're charging you for something that you can't possibly do.
Well, thank you, Jim, for calling in.
Thanks, Jim.
It's something we can look into. I hadn't heard the issue before. Just obviously on telehealth and other things like that, the office is actively involved in looking at how you continue to afford access to all types of healthcare services through these various modes of service. So can definitely look into it. I will say that credit card companies have been on the radar of the office most recently in the context, just in the last couple of weeks, of guns. Visa, Discover, American Express, MasterCard, they all committed. Right now, when you go to a store, there are codes that are attached to vendors that are used by the credit card companies to track. They gather data, et cetera. They agreed to do the same for gun stores, but then were lobbied by the gun industry and walked back that commitment and that promise to track those purchases, which are critically important. I'm saying if you can track us going to Walmart and buying milk, why not guns? Which gives law enforcement critical tools to not only look at where people are buying, if gun hoarding is happening, but also if someone illegally purchased a weapon, used it, and in some horrific crime, a law enforcement can go after them and hold them accountable. So just led a letter with other attorneys general across the country to push the credit card companies to keep their promise on that code. So we're following and in contact with them on a whole host of things, but this is a major issue. People say, well, what can I do in the context of gun violence? And leave it to certain stakeholders or just law enforcement to respond, or those community-based organizations that are breaking cycles of violence. Credit card companies can play a role too.
Before we get to, we have some audience questions. I'm going to get to in a second, but as long as you're talking about guns, I know that you're establishing this gun enforcement unit because apparently lots of police departments don't know that they're supposed to do inspections of gun shops.
It's for a whole host of reasons. So right now we are starting an internal working group, as well as actively reaching out to law enforcement and many stakeholders across the state to set up a gun enforcement unit and a police accountability unit. And for us, they go hand in hand. They're about, one is, trust in law enforcement. You need law enforcement to be a part of that, including a police accountability unit. And when it comes to guns, gun trafficking, major issue, ghost guns. People are making guns out of 3D materials these days. So how do we have a one-stop shop in the office to share best practices? We have folks in our state police unit that are doing trainings every day with local law enforcement. We need legislative solutions as well to keep folks from being able to manufacture these weapons in Massachusetts and sell them. In addition, this same unit can also address gun violence in the community and make sure that survivors are getting the resources they need. So there's a whole host of ways this gun enforcement unit and, of course, a police accountability unit could really spearhead the work nationally. And obviously, we have some of the most progressive laws when it comes to guns in Massachusetts, but we're still behind in many ways because of ghost guns. And because of the recent decision out of the Supreme Court, I'm already having to file briefs to protect our common sense gun laws here in Massachusetts.
Supreme Court decision about New York.
And about brewing, that's right.
Okay.
I think we have Jennifer at the microphone. She wanted to speak to the Attorney General Campbell.
Hi, Jennifer.
Hi, good afternoon, Attorney General.
Good to see you.
My family and I remain sickened by my brother Justin's Root's egregious killing.
That's right.
And the continued absence of anyone in a position of authority willing to enact a warranted independent investigation. As long as law enforcement is investigating themselves, their colleagues, and have a close working relationship with district attorneys, we will not get to accountability. This is all we are asking for. The Norfolk DA's office used Boston police detectives and Mass state troopers to investigate their own colleagues, and in just 30 days, they called their investigation. They concluded that 31 bullets at Justin while he was on the ground bleeding with nothing in his hands, they concluded that was reasonable. Most of those 6 officers that shot him met as a group before they were even interviewed 5 days after. There couldn't be a clearer conflict of interest. Given your experience, I remain hopeful that you will stand up for people like Justin, for the people who are voiceless. My question to you is twofold. How do you see your office addressing when officers use deadly force in this not so transparent process that is occurring in those investigations? And then also, obviously, I'd like to meet with you.
I know, and it's good
Jennifer,
to see
thank
you,
you.
and I know you and your father continue to go through a lot. And I don't want to minimize that. And I know my office has been in touch, and it's unfortunate because I couldn't make a particular meeting, but I don't want to discount the leadership and the team that works in my office. They work hand in hand with me. So if folks, and I want to say this even publicly, if folks don't get an immediate meeting with me because the work can be so overwhelming given where I am, when I tell my team to meet with a family or resident, they bring as much power as I would bring to that meeting to try to resolve an issue swiftly and with a sense of urgency and integrity. And they're dedicated to public service. I just want to name that. So we're working on that, and I hope
understand.
Pat and Ron Tier. So
We've got sisters going on.
I know, and we share the loss of a brother under different circumstances.
Yes.
The other piece is there's a lot the office can do. I want to first talk about post, right? We have the post commission, which really, if resourced right, and I have some briefings coming up with them about how the AG's office needs to work with post to look at cases of involving individual officers. So cases where there's an individual officer involved and folks have concerns, post really is the right place. We could get referrals from them. And so the question is how in the office we make sure that we have adequate resources and attorneys for those types of referrals. So we're working on that. Individual cases, post, AG's office working partnership. The police accountability unit that I proposed that we are working on setting up with this gun enforcement unit, 2 separate units, but they go hand in hand, is to address those systemic cases. The recent changes in some of our laws here in Massachusetts around police reform gave the AG's office incredible authority to look at pattern and practice investigation, so that's systemic stuff in a very meaningful way. This is the time to actually be more intentional of those types of matters. There are some in the office that are ongoing, but just a few, not enough, I think, given the authority. And also, we don't have enough attorneys. So this unit is someone to own that while we expand out that work to really get at what the spirit of that police reform law was about, to look at the systemic issues across Massachusetts and any police department where folks raise concerns about bias, over abuse of power, over use of force, et cetera. This unit would be designed to do that. And why I'm pushing hard to set up a unit is so that it's not just some random cases that come through some random calls or referrals. It's more proactive outreach from the office, working with law enforcement on those types of cases and concerns that the office continues to get from different municipalities and residents across the state.
You know, Jennifer, thank you for being here. We appreciate it.
Just a quick follow-up on this.
Yes.
It does seem kind of crazy to me that we ever had the system where the police investigate their fellow officers, and even the district attorney, because as Jennifer pointed out, you know, Marion Ryan or Hayden, whoever it is, they have close relationships with the cops under their jurisdiction. So it seems to me it's hard for them to do an independent investigation when these are essentially their colleagues. You're a lawyer. You must have thought about this.
Well, absolutely. And I come obviously from the city council, chairing the city council committee on public safety and criminal justice, work with BPD all the time on a whole host of issues. And those conflicts sometimes exist or they're inherent. This is why I think the Police Accountability Unit is so critical.
Yeah.
Right now, the office will get referrals from our district attorneys. I just was meeting with all of them the other day, every single district attorney I met with at their association meeting, to think about ways we can actually partner in the work together. That's critically important, taking guns and drugs and fentanyl and everything off our streets. But the other piece is we are getting cases from these district attorneys when they run into a conflict. And we will review and take some of those matters, but we can also, I think, in more proactive ways in certain contexts through a set-up unit, be proactive in engaging with district attorneys and others to say, there may be some conflicts there, and our door is open to take these types of police accountability cases and to do it in a more systemic way and to be a one-stop shop for folks and departments all across the Commonwealth in this context.
Can I do a follow-up briefly, a couple of follow-ups to the whole police issue, this inherent conflict that you seem to agree is a serious issue. Mary, you mentioned Marion Ryan. My understanding is what Marion Ryan did in the case of the young man, Syed Faisal, who was shot and killed by a police officer in my hometown of Cambridge, was ultimately she requested an inquest, which I think she says she does, an independent investigation whenever there's a police-involved shooting. Why shouldn't that be the policy? Why shouldn't that be the default so that there is public trust in an outcome? Even if you, as a leader, or John Doe, as a citizen, is convinced that DA can be fair investigating that cop, why not remove any appearance of improper relationship and automatically have statutes that say it should be removed to independent investigators?
Well, it could be. On the statute side, we'd have to ask the legislature about that. I think with conversations with the district attorneys that I'm looking to establish and build those relationships up, we can have conversations about doing that without a statute.
Would you urge them to do that?
I think they should review it and look into it. I know I've never been in the district attorney's office. I've never worked in a police department, but on the council side, worked closely. When I was on the city council, worked closely with BPD and with Rollins at the time, who was our district attorney. And you could see the conflicts. You work so closely together to investigate and resolve a matter. Each district attorney is different. They're obviously duly elected, but it is an opportunity to have conversations with folks about that. But one thing I know that we are well situated to do is to establish this police accountability unit, to go out there to have conversations with law enforcement, which I'm actively doing right now, including district attorneys, to say there's a role to play in helping us set this up. But more importantly, we are creating a space to bring these types of cases so that we can resolve those conflicts and hopefully get justice and accountability and transparency in those cases.
One last police question. You're talking about where people can go, the post-commission, it's called,
Yes.
right? And things like that, or the office you're trying to construct. We read a story in the Globe the other day. Mayor Wu was with us a couple of weeks ago and talked a lot the day after two cops were fired. Abbassiano, who had been at January 6th and was tweeting about the vice president being treasonous. The Catone, who had been involved in these anti-vax things, and we learned a lot more yesterday that she was doing, including without permission taking away the coverage for the mayor and a whole variety of things. And this guy Geary, who was fired last year for was using a term about rats get bats. A guy by the name of Diaz, who's a law enforcement person, went to January 6th with Abbassiano, apparently had the same intent, etc. The one difference which caused him not to be disciplined at all was that he didn't do any outward thing like a tweet like Abbassiano did. If I tried to put myself in the position of somebody living in Boston with Officer Diaz. I live in Cambridge. If Officer Diaz was a cop in my neighborhood and I knew he had gone to a rally, the purpose of which was to overturn a democratic election in the United States, I don't know if I'd feel very comfortable having him protect me. If someone feels that way, what recourse do they have? Because the commissioner decided Officer Diaz should continue in his job.
Well, trust. When this police accountability unit or anything we're talking about, it's about ensuring trust. And that's just not for the community, that's also for law enforcement. You build trusting relationships, you're more effective in your jobs. When I was on the city council, I already have a record and a public statement on all of this. As chair of that committee on public safety, was calling for BPD to release the name and names and any investigation details related to any officer who participated in that insurrection. One thing that was very unsettling and disappointing was how long it took for information to be released. We had hearings on this, and we would just sort of get the runaround. So I think transparency is critical. You have information, release it. Sometimes you can't release it in certain stages because it's an active investigation, but you can tell folks you're investigating, right? And so I was pushing then, and I think anyone who participated in an insurrection that was more than just about overturning an election, it was about the foundation of our democratic institutions in this country, should be fired. It's as simple as that. And was on the record saying that back then. That doesn't change because I'm in a new position now. You are held and should be held to a high standard when you are a public servant, serving the public, earning their tax-paying dollars, and doing the work of public service.
So should there be a second look at Officer Diaz based upon what you just said?
Anyone who participated in that, actively participated in an insurrection of this country, should be fired.
Let's go to Chuck in Holbrook. Chuck, you're on the phone with the Attorney General of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, Andrea Joy Campbell. Go ahead.
Hi, Chuck.
Hello, Chuck.
Hi. Thanks for letting me on here. Let me turn this down. I wanted to talk about the recent letter in which the AG is threatening to sue towns that do not create the MBTA zoning district. So what I think is this law was written by applying, the same broad brush to all 175 towns that it affects without consideration given to the unique issues that happen within our individual towns, and I want to talk about Holbrook in particular. The town is only 7 square miles, has a population of 11,000. We're a pretty dense town. We're not a city, but we're a pretty densely populated town. The median value of a house in our town, the median household income, the number of college grads in town are all below those figures for the county, Norfolk County, and for the state.
Hey, Chuck, if I may, to shorten it only because for the people who don't live in Holbrook, I believe where you're going is you believe that the same rules should not apply to all 177 communities subject to law. Is that where you're going? And you want to know if there can be some accommodation? Is that the gist of your call?
Well, that's the gist of, somewhat the gist of my call, but I also think the whole law should be rescinded.
Well, okay. Well, it is the law of the Commonwealth. We talked to Charlie Baker a lot before he signed it. Let's hear what the Attorney General has to say. Can you explain the background for those who don't know what you did? Yeah.
So it is the law of the Commonwealth. It was the law before I became Attorney General, and it was signed by Governor Baker and of course worked with the legislature before. Bipartisan effort to help address the housing crisis in the Commonwealth. And if you live here, you know it is extremely expensive to live in Massachusetts. We are one of the most expensive states to live in, especially if you're an elder person. And so the MBTA Communities Law was designed and intended to say to towns that have MBTA resources, stations, infrastructures in their communities, there are 177 in the Commonwealth, they have an obligation to create multifamily housing around those stations, which makes total sense. You are benefiting in many ways from this public good, and so how do you help us address the housing crisis? A lot of debate and conversation, I was not privy to that, but it is the law of the land, the law of Massachusetts,
right.
The land, Massachusetts, the land. And so what was critical for me along with the team was to make sure that folks had guidance around the implementation of this law. Not everyone, so many folks were confused. Local municipalities, leaders, advocates, many folks were confused about what the obligation is. And we made it crystal clear in the advisory put out from the office, you have to comply. Compliance is not an option. And if you do not comply with this law, you could lose funding from the state for housing projects. You could be in violation of state and other federal fair housing laws. But our goal putting this out was not to say we're coming after you immediately to enforce you and bring your municipality to court. It is to work and offer technical assistance along with DHCD to these municipalities to bring them into compliance.
And they each come up with their own plans.
That's exactly right. And so
to
Chuck's point, it isn't. And if anything, already elected officials and others are reaching out saying, thank you for letting us know we didn't have an option here, we have to comply. But now we have questions on how we do that. DHCD and others have a whole host of resources, including other community-based organizations, to help municipalities, planners, et cetera, develop this type of housing, which isn't just for families and making sure you can afford to live here. This affects all of us in our economy. And we have been stressing that. And also, if we want to reach our climate goals, transportation goals, other things as well, it's all connected. And so we're in contact with municipalities to offer up assistance, technical assistance, to work with them. And it's really important and essential to address the housing crisis in the Commonwealth.
We're going to take a quick break, but I should note before we go that I read a story from our colleagues at GBH here that reported that, things are really bad when the complaints about housing in the Commonwealth are more than those that are about car dealerships. So things are really at a desperate point. We're talking to the Commonwealth's Attorney General, Andrea Joy Campbell. She's going to be with us till the top of the hour. You can reach her at 877-301-8970. We'll try to take as many calls and texts as we can. We are broadcasting live at the Boston Public Library, listening to 89.7 GBH, Boston Public Radio.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you. And the Center for Jewish Studies at Harvard University, presenting an evening with Tony Kushner. The Pulitzer Prize-winning playwright comes to the Sanders Theater March 28th. This event is open to the public. More at boxoffice.harvard.edu. And the Office of the Massachusetts State Treasurer. The Unclaimed Property Division is holding unclaimed funds for the citizens and businesses of the Commonwealth. You can see if you have unclaimed money at findmassmoney.com. And the Boston Speakers Series, announcing its upcoming season of 7 evenings featuring Jane Fonda, Van Jones, former Ukraine Ambassador Marie Yovanovitch, and Congressman Adam Kinzinger. bostonspeakers.org. And Mass General Brigham Health Plan, a health plan connected to a world-leading healthcare system, committed to providing innovative plans, coverage, and a broad network of doctors. Learn more at massgeneralbrighamhealthplan.org.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy and Marjorie Egan. We're live at the Boston Public Library, streaming at facebook.com/GBH News and at youtube.com/GBH News. If you're just tuning in, the Attorney General is kind enough to be giving us an hour every month for you to ask questions, make comments. Andrea Campbell is here till 2 o'clock at the Boston Public Library, and her number for texting and calling is 877-301-8970.
Attorney General, we talked about this with our listeners the other day, that in the last few days, it seems like, especially with March Madness, every time we turn on the television, there's another ad with Gronk or with, some other, David Ortiz, some famous athlete or some famous comedian. Lenny Clark is on there telling us all that we should start gambling immediately. And I know your office has voiced some concern about this deluge of ads. What's the deal?
I just have to go back. I was looking for the woman's name who called in. I think it was Jasper, who talked about doxing. And I was
Jasper, yeah.
And then part of that is because I'm on social media from the office point of view, but I don't keep those apps on my phone.
You're turning red, by the way. Are you aware of that?
No, that's a good idea.
No,
not to keep
I don't
those
keep
apps
those
on your
apps
phone.
on my phone. But one of my team members and lawyers from the office added a point, which is important, is doxing from a harassment standpoint, which I said, it's one thing to just put your information out there. You have to have a larger context. But from the harassment standpoint, is illegal. But again, if folks feel as though people are using their information or posting it for different reasons, reach out to our office and we'll take it case by case. But my folks are on it. Mobile sports betting, everyone I'm sure has seen the ads, seen them, have them pop up on your
Who'd you sign up
phones.
with?
Who'd I sign up with?
Which mobile app did you sign up with?
Oh, none.
None, okay.
None.
I think that's wise.
Although I went to Princeton, and so for the NCAA,
that's right.
Oh my God!
people were like,
16.
Princeton's doing amazing, and I thought, I should have bet on them.
And they got that kid that's not only a big basketball star, but a big academic star, an economics major. I heard him interviewed this morning. He was great.
It's quite amazing. So people were literally calling and texting me as if I worked at Princeton University and saying, congratulations, this is amazing.
It was a great jump shot, Attorney General. Everybody's talking about it.
It's amazing. It's exciting. So I will just say on the sports betting issue, obviously sports betting is the law of Massachusetts and the Commonwealth, and we've made that clear that we're not going to stand in the way of the implementation of that. What we are concerned about and want to make sure that we're doing from the AG's office is protecting consumers, protecting our young people. We already know it can be an area that can lead to addiction, which can, and of course, addictive use, which can lead to mental health concerns, substance use disorders, you name it. And so our job is to protect the consumers. So we've been going back and forth with the Gaming Commission, as well as operators, to make sure there are parameters in place to protect young people who are under 21, to make sure they are not betting, and to make sure that things are designed in such a way to not target or advertise or market to them. We have also been making sure that these platforms and the ways in which they are designed are not utilizing people's personal information against them, and targeting folks in different ways, which can lead them to either gamble more or use their information for other purposes. And we're also making sure that folks who benefit, so in the news lately, third-party advertisers, folks who are used to market to market gambling and to say, go to DraftKings or whoever and place a bet, that we're also protecting folks from that type of behavior, and that those advertisers shouldn't profit off of encouraging folks to place specific bets, et cetera. So we are trying to do our best to work with the Gaming Commission on these regulations to protect the consumer, because we know what's to come, especially when you're already looking at the rollout and the devastating effects it can have on
Doesn't
residents.
the legislature, when they authorize this and signed by the governor, don't they have the ability in the legislation to dictate what can and cannot be in advertising? When you say don't target young kids, it seems to me when you have Rob Gronkowski in an ad, who is wildly popular with young people, David Ortiz, maybe the most popular ball player of our lifetime, athletes are pretty popular with young people. Could they not say what you can? And could they also not require that you say you actually have a better chance of losing than you do of winning?
So I will say the legislature, in their back and forth, did what they could, and sometimes you intentionally leave things a little broad for regulations to figure it out, and for the Gaming Commission to have all these types of conversations with all stakeholders to get their perspective. And that's what they did yesterday, and they'll continue to do. But you raise a good point, and that's where we are really focused on, and maybe at moments we're alone in this, but whether it is experts or announcers, athletes, whoever being used to send people to various applications to place bets, that they shouldn't benefit. They shouldn't get paid, for example, of encouraging you to place a certain bet that will likely lose and get a percentage of those losses. They shouldn't get the money of encouraging folks not only to sign up, but taking, if that person, or if I placed a whole bunch of bets, for example, they shouldn't get a percentage of all the wages that were placed. Yes, we understand if you go on Instagram and you see an ad, fine, go click this button and look into placing a bet. But there should be some parameters around that where these third-party experts, influencers, or companies are not benefiting monetarily. So we are really, I like to think the office is at the forefront of trying to protect the consumers in this industry here that we know, of course, can have devastating effects on young people and residents in many ways. So we're doing our best to do what we can.
Miles is at the mic at the Boston Public Library.
Thank you.
Apparently you know all the questioners, do you not?
Well, from the community.
Okay, fine. Miles, welcome
I will
to the
continue
show.
to be an AG that's in the community. Good to see you.
Good to see you.
Thank you. On a very local level, what recourse, what remedy do constituents have when their local officials move forward on a project, on a mission that has clearly and already been vetted and deemed unacceptable by that community? In my case, I'm specifically referring to my neighborhood in West Roxbury, we're dealing with an ongoing mitigation problem on our main thoroughfare, Center Street. The city, back in 2019, under the Walsh administration, was going to move forward with the installation of bike lanes. It was rejected by the community. This new administration, to this point almost silently, is moving forward once again with plans to perhaps try to do it again. And
so what's your question? What recourse
does the constituency have when their elected officials move forward on something that clearly the community has spoken out against?
I mean, I think some of it goes back to local authorities, right? So I was obviously on the city council. We had some examples of this. Community not happy with projects moving forward, et cetera. They testified, they showed up, they hired lawyers to challenge the city, which is not uncommon if their wishes were not followed. It's rare that maybe an AG's office would get involved. It depends. Obviously, we are involved in what's happening in Rockport because that is a public interest and public good conversation.
Yeah,
We're
public
required,
beaches, right? The public
required
beaches
to
there.
represent the Commonwealth there. But in this instance, I would need to know a little bit more with respect to the specifics on what was promised under Marty and what was promised under
How does someone like
Wu.
Miles convey to your office the little bit more that might cause you to decide it's appropriate?
Right over here.
No, I mean,
Right
they
here.
don't just walk over to an aide. If someone, he can, but if somebody is listening, what do they do if they're in Miles' situation?
They can file a complaint. Let me make sure I have it right. They can
Okay.
file a complaint on the office. They can call the hotline 617. That's probably the best. I literally
Okay.
have 10 numbers here.
Okay, go ahead. What
But
is it?
727-8400 is probably the best. 617-727-8400 is probably the best way to lodge a complaint, and we can go from there.
But Miles, she's saying apparently you can talk to one of her coworkers because you happen to be here.
One
That's
of my
the way it
team
works.
members who's here. And I
Exactly.
will say, every time I come here, I come with team members
Great.
who are doing the work in partnership with me. I don't do it alone. And we can go from there. But locally, it is difficult. If it's a development or zoning decision decided by a board, et cetera, where the office can show up is how I talked about either Rockport or open meeting law violations, other things too. So we can get more information.
Good luck,
on
Miles.
us.
Thank
and
you
good
for
to see you.
being here. We appreciate it.
You know, here's another thing that we are talking a lot with listeners about, ticket pricing. I just got a text from Judy in Worcester who says, my granddaughter and I were trying to get tickets to see Hosier. I don't know that.
Oh, Hosier, yeah.
Okay, at the Bank Pavilion today, found a great seat for $149, but when it came to checkout, the Ticketmaster fees were $377. Judy wants to know if this is illegal, and she just wants to clarify this wasn't through a ticket broker, second party kind of market, but through the Ticketmaster site. Boy, I didn't know you could do that either.
We can look into it. And what was her name?
Judy from Worcester.
Judy, and I was just in Worcester. I share some of your concerns. And what I mean by that, whether it's airlines and fees or what she just mentioned, or just even trying to buy tickets recently for the family. Bought 2 tickets, went back to buy 2 more tickets, and the price shot up.
Yeah.
In a matter of 2 minutes for the same flight. So I said, well, wait a minute, I have questions around that. But I think it's something...
Excuse me, if you call the airline and say, this is Attorney General Andrea Campbell, do they answer your call a little bit more quickly? or what? Are you on hold for 45
you have
minutes?
to be careful in doing that. And obviously the benefit I wouldn't want just for me, I'd want it for every consumer in Massachusetts. But we're looking into it. And why this, I like that she brought up this point, because one of the things that the office does really well, and she should also call us.
Okay.
617-727-8400.
727-8400,
Yes,
Judy.
because in certain instances, depending on the type of case, we've been able to call a vendor or someone else, insurance company, to literally get someone, a cruise line, whatever it is, to get someone's money back into their pocket if they felt they were legally charged something. So the office does it all the time in terms of constituent cases. The things you'll never read about because there's small dollar amounts from the media perspective, but from the consumer perspective, it's a lot of money. So call us. But one piece that I think is really important is the office, yes, we're focusing on making sure people know the office is accessible. We're focusing on safety in terms of guns and violence. We're focused on the well-being of our kids, but we're focused on the economics too. The office does so much to put money back into the pockets of workers, of residents, elders, every single day. Wage theft, major issue. You go to work, you don't get paid. Everything around scamming folks. You paid for something, they said it was supposed to be this price, it was something different in the context of insurance, so much. And so what I'm doing actually is hiring someone at the executive level in the office to be what I'm calling an economic mobility advisor, looking across every single bureau, what could we be proactively doing to help folks build wealth? Not just put a few dollars back in your pocket, build wealth. So take on things like this, price gouging in a systemic way. Look at ways in which, in communities of color, for example, it's still difficult to get a housing loan, or how your house is appraised. There are differences based on your race. I mean, there's so much to do in this context. And bringing on someone to own that, to do that in a way that I think will be unique. The AG's office isn't usually known as anything that involves economics. It's usually the governor or someone else. But let me tell you folks, the Attorney General's office every day is helping to put money back into your pockets, or proactively thwarting any scams that could take advantage of consumers. And so including in the context of big airline merges and everything else. So this is critical for the office. I wanted to be able to add that point based on that phone call, but she should call the office.
You know, talking about putting money in people's pockets, we were going to ask you at the end, but since it flows from what you just said, in addition to what you talked to Marjorie about at the top of the show about youth well-being, and the training and more that's being done around hate and school sports and that sort of thing. It's the 9th summer of the summer jobs program. It's whatever it is. Tell
Summer
people
youth jobs.
what the deal is, who's eligible, what the deadline for application is, et cetera.
Absolutely. So we just put out some grants for youth jobs. These are summer jobs which offer young people an opportunity to work in their community in jobs that promote good nutrition, physical health, healthy living. There are grants that are funded through settlements that the office gets. So it's a continuation of the work we've done in the past, which is really exciting. And so their application is on our website. If you just go to mass.gov/ I would say GOV. It's longer. It's 2023 Healthy Summer Youth Jobs.
That's hopeless.
But if you
Can they
found
Google
exactly,
summer? Okay.
if you just look online at the AG's office, you will be able to find it.
Fair enough. Molly and Townsend, you've been very patient. You're on with the Attorney General. Welcome.
Oh my gosh, hi. This is so exciting.
Oh my gosh.
You called us. You know that, Molly, right?
I know, but I got
I'm
picked.
kidding. Go ahead.
Hi, Ms. Campbell.
Hi,
Thank you for
Molly.
having
Oh
me
my
on.
gosh, Molly, look at us.
Go ahead.
I am a new mom. I have a 2.
Oh no.
Oh,
I
Molly, we
work
lost you.
full-time and-
Molly, after you said you're a new mom, your phone cut
Yeah,
out. So
repeat.
tell us what you said after that.
Oh, I have a 2-year-old and a 10-month-old. I work full-time, and I'm a homeowner in the state, a new homeowner in the
Great.
state. And I have been struggling massively to get the medical health leave and the bonding leave available to me under PSMLA in Massachusetts. So this is my second time around with this process, and it has been very hard to get specific assistance from the office itself. The guidance, not to go into too many details, the guidance that I have received has resulted in conflicting information. Most recently, I was advised to file an appeal on my claim, which I did February 2nd, and I was told I would receive a decision if I would be approved or not, or if it would have to go to a subsequent hearing within 4 weeks. I called back at the beginning of March and was told at that time to just give it some more time. So I called back today and was told that my appeal was marked withdrawn by the claimant on February 6th, which I did not do. So I was advised again to call the appeals office, and they told me just to start the whole process all over again, which now will have been the 3rd time.
I think, Molly, if I can interrupt you, I think the Attorney General has some advice as to...
Yes, so
sure.
our
Go
team
ahead.
member is here, so if you could stay on, Molly, we could get more details, obviously get your phone number, and call you back and look into this for you.
So, Molly, do not go away. We'll get your contact information. We'll immediately give it to the Attorney General's staff, and you'll hear from them.
And we will follow up, Molly, okay?
And congratulations on the kids in the house, and good luck with
And
this.
thanks
Thank
for
you.
calling in.
Thank you very much, Molly from Townsend. We appreciate it.
Rob in the North End is a big fan of yours, Attorney General. He says that
However.
when they lived in Dorchester, they were very well represented by you, and they offer congratulations. But oops, oh, there he is back again. Okay,
Robert?
Yes, Rob is how he signed it. But he said his landlord is yet to apply for a lease renewal for April. We moved to this present apartment due to lead poisoning of our child. The concern may be discriminated against due to an investigation by the state lead team. I'm a Marine Corps veteran. My wife is a French African immigrant, American citizen. Our 3 children are biracial. The landlord is not the owner. What are our rights?
If we could get his contact information, we can follow up, because obviously it involves a specific landlord.
Yep.
But it's an opportunity to share that hotline again in terms of the consumer hotline, 617-727-8400, because at the number one types of cases we're getting right now, and that has changed since previous years, is cases involving landlord-tenant relationships. And folks dealing with all types of things. I gave a security deposit, was supposed to get it back, I didn't get it back, the conditions in which someone's living, lead, mold, pest, you name it. So I want folks to call our office, because the sanitary code has been updated. There are new requirements starting April 1st for tenants. Most probably know about them. And if you are having any type of issue with your landlord, call us. And we've been really helpful in addressing those issues in significant ways. And the office is really responsive. But housing concerns, major issue, I understand that. So please call. And thank you for the kind words, Rob.
We'll pass along the information. 877-301-8097. Where are we going next for the Attorney General, colleagues?
We're keeping us in suspense, Jim.
What?
They don't want to tell us.
Can you pick somebody, please? There we are. Jonathan in Sherborne, you're on with the Attorney General. Welcome.
Thank you so much. I
Thank you.
appreciate it. Big fan, Margie and Jim.
Thanks.
Thank you. Talk to you, Attorney General. Our family, going back to the healthcare crisis in this country, our family has certainly not been immune to that, and it has resulted in huge amounts of money in private pay, relentless chases to get money back from the insurance company, none of which have been successful to date. My question, I guess, is two-part. One is, why are the insurance companies, or is there work being done around the insurance coverage to ensure that a much broader swath of mental health coverage is covered, mental health issues are covered? And the second is, why is it that so many healthcare providers are allowed to insist on private pay when they should be providing a public service?
Jonathan, thank you.
Thank you, Jonathan. And if, I don't know if Jonathan hung up or
He's
not,
there.
But Jonathan, if you have specific questions around your specific insurance company, stay on the line, because we can get your information to look into that. I remember being on the
Stick around, Jonathan. Don't go away. We'll put you on hold.
Don't go away.
Yep.
But on the larger questions, earlier talked about mental health access. I'm still in the process of hiring, so literally the folks that lead the various bureaus, including the Healthcare Bureau, interviewing in close to having someone run that bureau, because some of the folks went with our new governor. But the topic of discussion has been, how do we make sure that folks have access to mental health services, all types of healthcare services, that it's affordable, that's accessible. And there is absolutely a role for the Healthcare Bureau in the office to play, whether it's around cost, dealing with insurance companies. I mentioned reimbursement rates earlier, expanding access to certain types, or expanding healthcare provisions within the insurance companies. So these are conversations we'll have with the legislature, with the governor, with a lot of our large healthcare institutions already. We are already having some of these conversations, but a plan, I think, is due, and there's a role for the AG's office to play. I was just in the State House yesterday, meeting with the Speaker, meeting with the Senate President, not only with respect to the budget for the office itself, but talking about where are the areas of focus. Nursing homes, elders, care, top of the list, everything related to guns and gun enforcement, mental health in the context of what you just mentioned. So more to come. And I do know it can be difficult to navigate insurance companies, even if you are covered, and not necessarily to get the benefits that you think you have from your insurance company. If you think that's the case, call us. We have worked with insurance companies. We have helped folks navigate some of these concerns to success. So please reach out to the office.
How's the first couple of months been, by the way?
I love my job. On the days that are difficult, obviously starting in Worcester at a funeral is never easy. But I wake up every day. It's an honor and a privilege to serve in this role. I tell the governor, she can't come back because I know I have the better job. If I saw the president or the vice president or anyone else, I would say the same. The AAGs across the country, given the issues we're talking about, discrimination, predatory practices and scams, and people trying to steal our folks' money, taking advantage of elders, which is a major issue, our young people struggling in terms of access to health care, bullying, you name it, discrimination, the Supreme Court going in the wrong direction. The list is long. AGs are going to have to step up, and those who are bold and courageous, who have a sense of empathy and morality and compassion. In Massachusetts, we've always been a leader, so we'll continue to do that to set the way. I get to do that every day with an incredible team of folks. I am so blessed.
How old are your kids?
3 and 5.
Oh my gosh. 5 know what you do for a living?
He does. I went to his school and talked to his kindergarten class. And it's a very, I know, oh wow, it's like, what do you say? And I was, what does Mama do? She helps people. And they can say Attorney General. Aiden's 3, Mama's the attorney, yes, but they have a sense, my 5-year-old a greater sense, and that Mama's going to work. So it's wonderful.
So the 5-year-old's expected to come in with a uniform as the general with some kind of cap
but
on
they had a lot of questions, and it matters, right, to the folks in the class, and then particularly the young girls to see me there, and to my son too. But it's at the end of the day, we're in public service to help people, and that's what it should be about.
So give that number again, which is the sort of general consumer
the general
number. Yeah.
617-727-8400.
And if people want to go to your website to sort of fish around and see what...
mass.gov/AGO. I will tell you, it can be difficult to navigate. I'm already talking to our comms team on ways to make us more accessible on the website, more user-friendly. So things to come and figure out how to do that. So if it's difficult to navigate that website, 617-727-8400. Please don't hesitate to call. Even when you think maybe there's not an issue there, call and let us talk you through that and determine that with you.
And make sure you provide beach access in Rockport and beyond, okay?
We're working on it. We're working on it.
Fair enough.
Yeah,
Andrea Campbell, it's great to see you.
It is great to see you, and I'm very sorry we couldn't get to all the texts and calls. We were just swamped with both for the Attorney General, so we did our best. Anyway, thank you very much, Attorney General Andrea Campbell, for coming in and taking our questions and the questions of people here.
Thank you all. Thanks to the audience.
Thank you for people that came down to the Boston Public Library. I want to let you know what we're doing next week. On Monday, we've got Jennifer Horn and Sonia Chang Diaz for a Monday morning political panel. State Auditor Diana DiZoglio, who's going to audit the legislature and get to the bottom of...
No, she's going to try to audit the legislature.
Okay, she's going to try to audit the legislature and try to get to the bottom of how much it costs taxpayers for state government to sign all these non-disclosure agreements to cover up bad things. Inaugural poet and recent National Humanities Medal winner Richard Blanco, who was just
president.
He was next to Bruce Springsteen. You can ask him if he got Bruce Springsteen to sign his autograph or anything. The Reverend Zion Monroe and Emma G. Price III will be with us as well as Boston Globe Advice columnist Meredith Goldstein. We want to thank our crew, Zoe Matthews, Aidan Conley, Nicole Garcia, Hannah Loss, our engineer, John LeClaw Parker, our executive producer, Jenny Bologna, and our crew down here at the Boston Public Library, Evelyn Brito, Sai Patel, and Brad Lewis. I'm Marjorie Egan.
I'm Jim Bradley.
Thanks again for tuning in. I hope you can tune in again on Monday. And meanwhile, have a great weekend.